will receive a ballot in the mail later this week. They dropped in Denver today, the 15th. So look for your ballot in the mail. Now, you can review a sample ballot online at pickandvotes.com. All right. It's a long ballot. It will be a 2-card ballot this year, over 13 state issues. There are questions and Tabor questions, as well as candidates, and locally within Pickens County, we're coordinating 13 measures as well, issues and questions. It's a long 2-page ballot. To study for your ballot, we send out Tabor notices on October 5th. You should have received these in the mail. I dropped extras off at the front counter of Town Hall. It's also online at pickandvotes.com. You have received, as Bob just told me today, in your postal mail, the Blue Book as well. Now, you can simply go online at pickandvotes.com under 2018 elections. We have all these posted for your review online, plus the Women's League. The Colorado Women's League is another good resource. So sample ballot, studying your ballot. Ballots drop today. Once you vote them, what do you do? You can mail them back. It takes 2 stamps. Or you can simply drop them off. It's efficient, it's quick, and it's free. So where can you drop your ballots off? We opened all drop boxes yesterday. You can drop it off right outside Snowmass Town Hall. You can drop it off down at Basalt Town Hall. That's a joint drop between Pickens and Eagle, right outside the parking area, Basalt Town Hall. And you can drop it off at the Pickens County Administrative Building, right outside the clerk's office on Main Street. So it's easy to do so. Otherwise, mail it back. We're encouraging everyone to mail their ballot back by October 30th so we can assure you receive your ballot. I'm encouraging everyone to return their ballot as soon as possible. And there are a couple different reasons. Once we receive your ballot, your name comes off those electioneering lists. So you're not going to receive any more calls, knocks on doors, etc. The other thing is your ballot will be counted in the first returns on election night. By law, we are required shortly after 7 to release the first returns, shortly after 9, and then at the end of the night when we finish processing all our ballots. So how do you find information on election night? If you go to pickandvotes.com, we are linked into the state election night reporting system, which provides you statewide issues as well as local issues to review your outcomes. I always encourage people to return their ballots early so we can process them, because we only have so much room, and we only have so much human resource capital that we can place in that room. So if we have a rash of ballots coming late on election day, we are extending into the night, and I will call it and finish the next day if we go too far into the night. So I encourage everyone to return their ballots early. In fact, 85% of people know a month ahead of time basically how they're going to vote their ballot. So return it early. If you didn't receive your ballot, go online and review your registration record, update your address, and we'll mail it to wherever you want us to mail your ballot. So students out of state, people in Europe or elsewhere, we will mail your ballot to where you want us to mail it. Or you can come in during early voting and vote at the Pickens County Administration Building. We're open for 2 weeks before the election, starting the 22nd of October, 8:30 to 4:30 Monday through Friday, and Saturdays 10 to 2. So you can vote early. Avoid those lines. There will be lines on election day. Again, it's a 2-card ballot. It's a very long and complex ballot. There are 3 service centers open on election day. Again, Pickens County Administrative Building. Here, Snowmass Town Hall, and Down Valley and Basalt at Emma Church. And that's on election day, November 6th from 7 to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We are looking for community members to help us as election judges, so if you know of anybody that's interested in helping us, we have several positions open. Students 16 years and older can help us on election day. We're looking for 1 young person to help us in the lobby of Aspen to be a captain, just simply to use their iPad and look up in registration record for people to let them know where they live and how they're registered. Yeah. So if you know of somebody that might be interested in getting credits for school credit, send them our way. Again, if you want to be a judge, go online to pickandvotes.com, election judge tab. There's an apply for election judge application there, short and then we will follow up with anybody that wants and is interested in helping us. I think that's about it. Oh, one other thing. We will be closed. We, meaning the motor vehicle department, will be closed on Election Day. Please, community members, realize that because we are using our staff as resources from the motor vehicle department to run elections. Okay, are there any questions? It's a lot, but any questions, go online, pickandvotes.com. It's all there.
Okay, thank you, Janice.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you so much.
Rhonda, do you have any updates about town hall or anything? Okay, we just need to remember the night before we have council, so we need to,
Yeah, the Monday night, the 5th, we will have our meeting in the hallway so that Janice and her team can be in here setting up, so.
Thank you for allowing us to do that.
okay. Do I have anyone here who would like to make a public comment? Seeing no one, raise their hand. Let's move on to consent agenda. Do I have a motion for approval?
Yeah, so moved.
Second? Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
I do have a comment.
Okay,
On the minutes of 10-1, I believe, at least my notes indicate that during the FAB chairman's presentation, the council, directed the FAB to review the solar panel project in an effort to reduce the payback period. I think you'll find that on page 24 of 84 from the minutes of 10-1.
And the minutes don't reflect that, or they,
The minutes don't reflect that we directed the FAB to do that review.
okay. I finally got there. What line?
Well, I don't know what line, let's see.
Well, it's not on there.
It's not, it's missing, so.
but the
Here,
correction would be to
It
add
would
that.
actually be, I think, after either line 164, before he reminded, or on line 166,
Yeah. I see.
after that sentence.
Yep, that's exactly right. And we did so direct the FAB.
Yes, we did.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments on any of the minutes?
On that same minutes 10-1, line 52, we're missing a zero, $750,000.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
What line is that, Bill?
57.
57, sorry.
Yeah, it's a
So
healthy
52.
community fund,
Oh, okay.
750,000. Okay, with those corrections on the minutes, I'll move on to draft agendas. Let's take a look here. We have a joint meeting with BOCC tomorrow. Everyone will be there, correct?
And what, is that in Aspen's,
New building.
oh, it's in the new building. Okay. By the way, maybe this is a silly question, but, we have two meetings this week, one, this BOCC and the EOTC on Thursday. Do we get a voucher for parking?
I think it's a good question.
Not to my knowledge.
No.
If you,
Every EOTC meeting I go to, I pay for parking and,
Well, we can reimburse you, I know that much.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just curious. I
we
mean,
have a line item for expenses for that for council, so if you just bring
Yeah.
me your
Be
receipt.
happy
oh,
to-
okay. That's not a big deal, like I said, but I was just kind of curious, am I missing something? Has somebody told me where to park or not to park or something?
Just go find a 2-hour free parking and walk it.
Rafta.
No, the bus.
Yeah, RAFTA. Vote for 7A. Okay.
You have I don't know when this happened, but you have a tentative meeting set for Thanksgiving Day.
What?
What?
That was taken
No,
from,
it's supposed to be October 22nd,
yes,
not November 22nd.
Yes.
Because I have it in my calendar as October 22nd at 4 PM, if we need it.
Just reading the draft, and hopefully you'll change it before you approve it.
No, that is true. It's just the wrong month.
That's funny.
I think we could have turkey together.
That's funny.
Let's get that changed.
That got
But
changed.
aren't we,
So
is there no meeting on the 19th of November?
19th of,
When you originally approved your resolution for meetings last year,
Yeah.
you took that off because you wanted more time off for the Thanksgiving.
Oh, for Thanksgiving?
right.
Okay.
So at this time, it's not scheduled if you need it.
But if the meeting's tentative for Monday, you might want to make a decision about it.
Oh,
October
because-
22nd is Monday?
Yes, it is Monday. I think it was dependent on if we got through everything on Thursday, yes?
Right.
Okay.
Yes, it was.
Well, let's go back to Thanksgiving. I almost suggest that we would go ahead and put a meeting on Monday, the 19th.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'd be out.
Okay, you're out. Anybody else?
I think I'm leaving Tuesday. So, I'm okay.
Are you around?
Yes, I am around.
I'll be here.
Okay, we might have 3 people here, maybe 4. So let's go ahead and put it down. And then, we can always cancel it.
Will you
And
be
then-
here on the
Right
on
now,
Monday?
I should be here. The Thanksgiving potluck is the day before. Get that on your calendar.
Oh, it's Sunday, huh?
Yep. That usually starts around 5.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then we'll put October 22nd still tentative. Right?
I think I had a conflict. I have to check here. I thought I had a JV game. We talked about this
What date?
on the 22nd. And that's what I had said when we talked about this several weeks ago. I gotta check on
Okay, who else is going to be here on the 20th? Anyone else?
October 22nd?
October,
I'm here.
meaning Monday. And that's what I thought
What time is your
What's-
game?
4 PM.
I'm here.
You're here.
I'm here if we need it.
Bob, are you?
I'm here.
Bill? Bill,
October
Bob?
22nd, yes.
Yeah. Okay, let's tentatively do it. Ooh, this is not good because that's like next week.
It's Monday. Week from today, right?
Yeah.
Is there a need to do that meeting?
No? I mean,
Just depends on how far we
you
get
guys
on
asked us to be
Thursday.
tentative when we were just doing the budget schedule. You've got 4.5 or 4 hours scheduled on Thursday. We've never, I don't want to jinx anything, so I'll knock on, we've never not gotten through it, but you wanted to have that additional date just in case. So to answer your question, no, it's not necessary, but it was your request to put it on tentatively.
How about we just leave it tentative and make that decision on Thursday? And it'd be for budget only.
That's what it was intended for.
Okay, tentative, we'll call it on Thursday. Okay. With those changes in the minutes and some modifications to the agenda items and particularly the dates, all in support, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Let's move on to policy legislative public meetings. This is second reading ordinance number 10, series of 2018. An ordinance extending the temporary moratorium regarding the establishment of any new medical marijuana facility or retail marijuana establishments in the town of Snowmass Village. Clint, do you want to take this, or John? I don't think there's a
John.
lot of discussion. We've
I
already.
don't have anything further to add to the memorandum.
I had one question, and that is, there's a idiom here, MGSSE. What is that supposed to stand for?
Marketing,
Marketing,
group sales,
so-
and special events.
Thank you.
Any questions on ordinance number 10? Hearing none, do I have a motion for approval of ordinance number 10?
I'll
second
make a
reading?
motion to approve ordinance number 10, series of 2018.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Alyssa. Any further discussion? Rhonda?
Butler,
Yes?
Circus,
Yes.
Mattson,
Yes.
Shank,
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Okay,
Passes 5-0.
5-0. Thank you very much. David, you're up next. EOTC.
Good evening, council.
Even David.
Hi,
There,
Dave.
how are you, Dave?
Well, thank you. Well, you should have gotten your packets on Friday afternoon. You are going to be focusing predominantly on the budget process, or the budget for 2019. I did try to provide you a summary of the major items that are listed in the budget for 2019, which include the no fare service subsidy from Aspen to Snowmass and Woody Creek, the We Cycle program of contribution of $100,000, the Brush Creek connecting service at roughly $420,000. The regional transportation administrator, you will meet him at that meeting, and you met him the other day in a council session, David Pesnichek. The battery electric bus purchase that RAFTA and City of Aspen are working on for $500,000. We are going to be doing some more design work on the mall transit station for about $350,000. And the variable message sign we were talking about, we pushed that to 2019. We're trying to get CDOT to fund that under one of their IT programs, but that's a work in progress. There are a couple other things that are going to be brought up at the meeting. The mayor of Aspen, Mayor Skadron, was going to be giving you an update on the shift mobility lab work to date. They're still moving forward with that program with a number of various options, many of which came out of the community forum presentation that you got from John Bennett and John Sarpa, I believe, at an EOTC meeting. They're moving forward with a number of those recommendations, though there is no budgetary request in this EOTC meeting. You'll get a couple of updates on RAFTA Destination 2040, the electric bus purchase program, as well as floating the idea of relocating the park and ride kiosk from the airport to the intercept lot. And I believe we're trying to pull together an update on the FLAP grant and what that might mean for the intercept lot in the coming future. That grant was originally scheduled, it's about $3 million in improvements at the road intercept lot, and they'll begin surveying here shortly. So if you see people down there, that's what that's all about.
David, do you know what is being proposed in the next year's budget for the Buttermilk Underpass project?
At present, there's nothing in there.
There's nothing in there?
No.
David, I don't see it on this agenda, but it was on the RAFTA work product last week from Ralph Trapani about, hold on, something about the Maroon Creek, a study that he wants to do or will be doing for about $18,000 associated with that little project. Do you know anything about this?
No.
On here, let me see.
No,
if
I
can
don't.
find
I apologize.
what I call the sneak in.
I do know that RAFTA has been unbelievably overwhelmed with the demand for that service in the fall for the fall foliage.
That's true.
And I don't know if it's necessarily tied to that issue.
I'm gonna see if I can find it in this packet. just for your, what's interesting on the Maroon Creek, let's see if I can find it. I want to say it's the highest increase of any other transit-related data that we keep. Maroon Bells was up 8.71%.
You mean increase in ridership?
Ridership to the Maroon Bells this year over last year.
Really?
I think it's worth noting that Snowmass, with the creation of the 15-minute BRT service, also has shown gains in the, in the regional valley-wide service as well. So it's been pretty successful.
Very successful.
Marky, I'm not surprised to hear that the Bell's bus has such a increase in ridership. There are just so many more people up there every day. Even now, I mean, last Thursday it was snowing up there, and
Every photographer was there.
the parking lot was 3/4 full. It's just, you know, it's on people's radar, and they are going up there.
We probably need to get into a permitting system because, you know, I patrol for,
Well, you know,
it's getting to the point where it's overused.
we will have a permitting system for Hanging Lake
Yeah, I
next
know,
year,
yeah.
and we'll see how that works, and maybe that becomes a
A
model.
bellwether. The Snowmass Intercept, you're gonna love this, 23% increase since we did the 15-minute service.
Since when?
Since we started the
23%?
23% increase of ridership.
See, Bob, this is why you should vote for 7A.
Well, you know, this year, does that include 2018, Marky, or only up to
It's
2017?
as of 2 months ago.
Okay, so that included the repairs to the bridge, which got
Yeah.
a lot of people's attention.
Well,
Take the bus.
we don't know how many headed down Valley on
Yeah.
that bus.
That's true.
So, vote for 7A.
We know Adrian was on the bus.
Yes, we do.
Okay, I'm still looking for this, and if I find it, I'll.
David, real quickly, do you have any clue of what's going to happen with the update on the Aspen mobility shift?
Steve Scadron did a presentation to the community forum. Rose was at that meeting as well, because we participated in that process. It's kind of a reiteration of a number of things: ride hailing, ride sharing, more focus on trying to boost utilization of the intercept lot. To make that a better experience. They were talking about food carts, and they'll probably present an idea about that so people can get a cup of coffee, a Danish, while they're waiting for the bus, to make that a better experience for people. They're also trying to work on some applications that would help with carpooling. One of the people on the forum was very focused on, you have a lot of cars running around with one person in them. If you could at least get somebody on board with them, you'd take advantage of capital and operating costs that are already being expended, and you don't have to, you know, try and build more buses or buy more buses or build more highway capacity. So that's one of the things they're really trying to move forward on, and possibly make an investment in, but it's supposedly it's pretty spendy.
But there's nothing in the budget that proposed for the mobility lab as they were once talked about?
Not in what we have.
It's the expenditures would be City of Aspen expenditures, not EOTC expenditures.
David, this weekend, there was an article by Lo Semple about e-bikes and, you know, riding e-bikes for, you know, going in and out of town, going to work, et cetera, riding on errands and all that. Has there been any discussion about attempting to create some data on if and how much the e-bike use might be affecting single-use automobiles?
Anecdotally, I mean, in my industry, the first last mile aspect that the e-bike sort of addresses, first last mile being I got to get from my house to a bus stop,
Yeah.
that sort of, and then from the bus stop at the other end to my work. Everybody's sort of looking at that as a very positive thing and probably the latest, greatest possibility to help solve some of the transportation issues in urban areas. They have a tremendous potential. RAFTA obviously was trying to address the Rio Grande Trail and some of their activities up to this point. But e-bike technology is vastly outpacing even the way we even think about it right now. And so they are becoming very close to motorcycles, if you will, in some applications. So they have a tremendous amount of potential for that commuter that's doing just a local trip. We have looked at it here. We are a little bit, the whole We Cycle program, we're a little nervous about Snowmelt Road and Upper Brush Creek Road and what that would mean to a novice rider trying to navigate either one of those two roadways. So we've been very specific in targeting Club Commons to Town Park Station or maybe Mountain View to the mall as beginning and end points that where we might apply a We Cycle program. The stations are pretty spendy. We were looking to partner with the owners of the club and Club Commons at one point, but we didn't get very far with that attempt, although we haven't given up necessarily, but those are some of the thoughts. E-bikes in Snowmass make a lot of sense because they take that grade out of the climb to get from anywhere below the mall up to the mall or base village. And so we keep watching it pretty close, the technology pretty closely to see if that's applicable. It boosts the costs of everything. They're not cheap. Again, we still kind of worry about the liability if the bike isn't necessarily maintained up to snuff and they start going down Snowmelt Road or something. That starts to get pretty daunting. Pretty daunting from a liability perspective. And
Thanks.
bike lanes would help that too. We don't really do much on the shoulder of the road to protect the bicyclists, so that
Thank
would
you.
be something you'd like to see.
Any other questions for David? I did find this, it's 75,000 to be funded from the remaining 1.4 million of the integrated transportation system study. And it would be analyzing options related to bus priority, access to stops on bus movements at the Maroon Creek roundabout.
Yeah, I believe they're trying to address some of the, there's some turning movement conflicts when they come out onto Castle Creek.
Yeah, that's an alignment design concept to allow RAFTA buses to exit directly to Highway 82 from the Maroon Creek stop. Design concept for the Maroon Creek station to support direct bus access to State Road 82. Signing and striping and relocation of existing kiss and ride stops.
Yep.
Okay.
It
That's
also-
not on the agenda for Thursday night, though.
That's not on the agenda, no.
Okay.
And I do know it's somewhat, the parking obviously is, at Highlands is now becoming full. So they're relocating to Buttermilk, and that's kind of driving this. How do we address the demand to get up there? And that makes that stop at Maroon Creek all the more kind of important to function adequately for the bus service.
So,
Hey, we also have on the budget requests for the Snowmass Mall Transit Station. Can you give us an update on that?
We do have an RFP out. I talked about it a little bit in the memo, but we have an RFP out. We've taken a look at the plan that was before was grandiose, tried to address a number of issues that you have in the core of the community. It just became so daunting and the cost of it that we're trying to narrow the scope. We're trying to take a look at, can we make some improvements to the RAFTA facility within the kind of funding that we have dedicated between RAFTA, EOTC, and possibly a small contribution from our RET funds, maybe. I've got to talk with him about that. But, you know, some are keeping that project in the scope of about 7 million and trying to look at either, do we align the access road to the upper village with Albert Lane to create a better three-way intersection? We move into that hillside with the expansion of the RAFTA platform to create a better arrival zone for passengers coming between Aspen and Snowmass. Another way is to look at going from the RAFTA depot and decking over Lot 6 to try and get both the village shuttle and RAFTA all on one platform. This would have a lot of benefits for, RAFTA's carrying a lot of local trips, people getting off at Faraway, Owl Creek, Sinclair, even Club Commons at the rodeo grounds. They're taking seats that would be better used for regional trips between Aspen and Snowmass and Aspen, or Snowmass and Down Valley. So it's having a bit of an impact on the regional service. And so we're trying to get that, so if they're all on the same platform, then maybe we siphon off the local trips, creating surplus capacity for the regional service. And so we're trying to take a look at that, build some amenities for people and for the RAFTA drivers that have a delay factor there. We're just trying to get some conceptual ideas from it with the 50,000 that we earmarked in 2018. The RFP is to be closed October 31st. So then we'll be looking at what kind of interest there is from the architectural engineering firms, and then begin a very broad brush conceptual look at the RAFTA depot.
This is also part of 7A.
When you look at the bottom of the budget for the EOTC, there's the $6 million that's, I think it's called the Snowmass Village Savings Account.
Right.
That 350 is trying to put design efforts towards getting that designed correctly. You know, it's at 5%, so it's a good start towards the effort, but it's a long way to go. The idea would be, let's get some, this initial money, we'll get some concepts. That 350 will get the concepts further, and the council would be weighing in, of course, on, you know, appearance and that kind of stuff. We're not even sure where we can fit it or how it exactly would fit, and those design dollars would help us understand that better.
In a perfect world, we would be coming to you, let's say, in February-ish, with maybe 3 designs for you to kind of weigh in on.
Let me go. Summerish.
Summary, okay.
It's taking way longer to get even the first step done, so let's go ahead and say
I'm
summerish.
optimistic.
Yeah, I know. Let's say summerish.
I'll write that down.
Sometime in
Summary.
2019.
Sometime in 19, we're gonna try and bring you.
We're now trying to spend the first 50,000 in October of November. Summerish.
Okay.
I'm all for February.
Fair enough, thanks.
Any other questions for Dave?
Well, thank you, council. Hopefully it'll be a smooth meeting and all go well.
And that
Tonight
will
or
be
Thursday?
held at Aspen's,
Pick your
tonight, Aspen City Hall?
Both.
Yes.
We're not at, okay.
Yeah, no, Aspen.
I was surprised we're not in the new Pitkin County Administrative Headquarters.
They're not hosting.
Aspen's hosting, yeah.
It says Pitkin County to host.
Oh, it does?
And
I
chair
thought
meeting.
Aspen was hosting.
Well, on the packet, it says Aspen Council Chambers, Aspen to host.
Well, then I must have the wrong one up. I just pulled it up. Maybe it's an old one. No, could be. Okay, fine.
Thank you, Dave.
Alrighty. Are you all gonna be there?
I'm not, David.
4 or 5.
Okay. 4 or 5,
Last
okay.
I have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Chippy. Thank
Okay,
you, council.
Thank you,
Thank
David.
you,
Thanks,
Dave.
David.
let's move on over to budget presentation, marketing, tourism, group sales. Hi, Rose.
Hello,
Hi, Rose.
happy to be here.
You're
Lots
leaving
of
tomorrow?
exciting stuff on the horizon. Hey, Rhonda, can we get this up here? Do you have
Are
a
you
button?
leaving tomorrow on vacation?
No, I decided to wait one day. So
Okay.
did you guys have any feedback? We'll take care of it tomorrow. Just like that. I don't leave till Wednesday morning. See?
There you go.
Yeah, I thought you guys might try to keep me really late tonight, lots of tough questions, and I thought,
Don't put,
give me an extra day.
Marianne's got her box. What's that
Marianne's
box?
got her, yeah, she's amazing. She, as you'll see, she caught something on the packet that was, but I thought I would just start, and you guys should have this in your book, just with the aspirations statement of Snowmass Tourism. I don't need to read it to you all, but it's really around creating this multi-season, family-oriented, inclusive, welcoming resort. We want to have a lot of choices for fun and excitement, learning, but all in this natural splendor. And I think many of you participated in our brand platform exercise a few years ago, and it's embraced by nature, and we continue to use that as our starting point for all of our marketing messages. And so, oh, wrong computer, okay. Let's see. So we have a bunch of guiding principles that are really small and hard to read. But really, we feel that tourism, we want to generate this tourism-based economic impact, especially for lodging, retail, food and beverage and service industry. We want to generate trial and repeat visitation. We want to meet the needs of the visitors, and you think about our Ice Age Discovery Center and the Town Park Station and our websites, that's what those are there to do. We want to make sure that we provide a positive experience leading to positive reviews. We want to cooperate with all of our stakeholders, and regionally, you'll see that beyond. We want to be effective and efficient. We want our dollars to be well spent and to make sense. We want to maximize our return on investment. We want to promote the Roaring Fork Valley in general, and that we work cooperatively with our neighbors and our partners here. Let's see. We want to make sure that we communicate what we're doing in parts of, David just mentioned I sat on that mobility study. It's really about being, and Marky, you were on that as well, being part of the community. And then with our special events, we want to make sure we have a nice combination of things that appeal to locals as well as for visitors and first-time visitors and part-time residents and repeat visitors and all that. So I thought what we'd do is just kind of recap what the functions are, and then I'll show you some highlights between last year and this coming year, or 2018 and 19. So our marketing functions really focus on advertising our campaigns. Those are national, regional, and local. We do collateral. Marky, you asked me the other day how much our lure piece cost. I overestimated 65 cents a piece.
You're kidding.
65 cents a piece.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, aren't they pretty? Anyway, we run a number of websites. We have GoSnowmass.com. We have our Bike Snowmass, Hike Snowmass, as well as our VIK website. We do a bunch of email marketing, photography and videography, research. I shared some of the research results at the upload for the stuff we did this summer. Public relations and guest services. That's kind of what falls into the marketing functions, and then the special events are part of that budget as well, but I broke them out. So when you look at our marketing budget overall, this is revised slightly from the packet because Marianne reminded me that she updated the revenue numbers slightly, and then we added about $30,000 in special events from what you had in the packet we sent out. But when you compare sort of the changes from one year over the other, they're pretty, the biggest changes, so we doubled our capital improvement from $100,000 to $200,000. Payroll went up about $50,000, and those are annual increases in healthcare benefits and stuff like that. Office and related expenses came down. We had put some money in office supplies, thinking that we might move our offices, and that's not happening, so we took that out. And so that's why that comes down. pretty, we added some money for summer marketing, added some money to winter marketing. Our online also grew a little bit. Ice Age Discovery Center came down, really to match what our expenditures have been, and I think, and then we threw a little bit more into special events. Our 2018 numbers will end about $200,000 under budget. Part of that was a savings, that little box on the left for 18. We had some savings in our winter events. Not that we had savings, we paid them out of the previous year budget for the Grand Prix, which we had budgeted. We had budgeted and had hoped to have Sports Illustrated do a swimsuit issue here. They were sold, if some of you know, through, anyway, the company of Sports Illustrated was sold. So we put that project, we just moved it to the next year, so we didn't spend that money. It just got shifted. I mentioned the office supply change, the Ice Age Discovery change, and then, you know, we've transferred some things within lines, but so that's kind of like the macro look. When you break down the marketing spend, and this is really ads, collateral, and photography, winter and summer. You can see the online bit, we don't separate it. We have an always-on strategy for Google search and paid search and all those kinds of things, so we don't break it out for summer and winter. We upped summer. Winter kind of stayed flat, and part of it is because in 2018, we paid for a lot of the production of our new campaign. So in a sense, our media went up, but our expenses are flat-ish from last year. The media buy will be the same. Then when you add in special events, and you can kind of see we spend a lot more money on special events in the summer than we do in the winter, and you can see how the differences are. You know, we go from 1.77 in the summer of 18 to 1.955 all told, and the difference in 18 to 19's is really the Grand Prix is not here when we paid, you know, so that's pretty much stays the same, and a slight increase in the online presence when you add that in. This is our new campaign. We have quite a bit of media against it. It's launched. We've gotten great feedback so far. This will be the campaign that is in the budget for 19 for the 18-19 season, and we kind of split the winter cost between the two fiscal years, and we're assuming we'll run this for all summer and next winter as well. So that's the kind of campaign. The look. We also have some money budgeted to our local campaigns. The creative will change, but we support retail, we support dining, we support events all year round, and then biking and the weekly lineup is more of a summer initiative in terms of how we market it. But you can see we spent about $83,000, or projected $83,000 on summer local advertising and about $66,000 on local winter advertising. And that could flip just a little bit, tweak as we get to next summer. We haven't done the media plans for next summer, but that's the intention. A big part of, not a big part monetarily, but it's important for us to keep our stakeholder support and outreach. We do quarterly tourism talks. We do regular weekly emails about flyer events, occupancy reports, forecasting. We've gotten some great feedback this year on how we can do some, especially in the early and late season, use those as a vehicle to make sure everybody knows who's open and where they can send their guests, because that's been is always a little bit of a challenge. I don't know if you all realize that this past weekend we had a couple hotels sold out, and the town was at about 80% occupancy this past weekend. And
For what? For what?
well, there were a bunch of hockey groups in, and there was two groups in, regular groups, not hockey groups, you know. And so we had, and then just leaf peepers. And I don't know, that was before it started snowing on Thursday, is that when I got that number. I don't know if they had some cancellations, but we had a meeting with the lodging community on Tuesday or Wednesday last week, and everybody's like, wow, two properties said they were sold out, and two were like, we're packed, 75%. So So becomes more important for us to continue to communicate so that they can tell their guests who's open, what's going on, where they can send people. We also do in-person research. We've, for example, I've been on, not personally just me, but our team has been on a campaign to get feedback from summer events. We've had one-on-one meetings with just about 40 stakeholders to say, let's go through all the summer events. What'd you think of? How can we tweak them? What is your recommendation? We found that especially the smaller folks, need some support with photography. So we've implemented a program this year where we're going to send out some of our photographers to shoot their location, and we'll give them 3 photos that they can use as a result, like an interior, an exterior, and a detail shot, so that when you look at our website, and our website, I think, is quite beautiful. It really is kind of fun.
Yeah.
You know, the parts when you go dig deep and you go to the retailers and the restaurants, their photography,
Sucks.
your word, not mine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're like, let's just fix that. So we're hiring photographers to go make appointments.
That's great.
And similarly, we're doing one-on-ones with the smaller retailers and restaurants to get digital best practices. How can they kind of claim their business and make sure that they work with Google Maps to make sure that the address, because, you know, the address problem here isn't always where it is. So we're doing that this fall and into the winter season, just to hopefully bring all the rising tides. We go out in the community at the beginning of both seasons and meet at the properties with the concierge and the frontline staff, so that those employees know where to get resources, where they can find information, how to use our website, what tools we have available to them. And so our team goes out and does these in-person presentations. So there's not a lot of money attached. Well, there is some specific money in photography and digital best practices and some of the research and training, but a lot of it's just time.
Rose, I want to go back to your comments about occupancy last week, which,
Yeah.
I mean, fabulous that at this time of year we're getting those kinds of occupancies. But it begs the question of, what do we do? How do we get to our food and beverage and our retailers to find out what their requirements are? When will they be open, at what occupancy levels? I mean, if we can get 80% occupancy in October, there's no place for anybody to eat.
Yeah.
So we're losing all that, again, we're losing, all that revenue because there's nothing locally staying open.
So I think that this past week we had a marketing group sales and special events advisory committee meeting, and one of the board members suggested that in our next meeting, that the board makes a statement of what our season dates are. And there's not a lot of teeth to that in terms of, but to put it out there, the feedback that we've gotten, and I think I mentioned earlier that we can do a couple things, is we already do a call around to all the properties and all the restaurants and the retailers to find out when they're scheduled to close and what they're planning on doing. What we've been asked, and I think we can do it, it's going to take some time, but I'm committing to doing it, is that early season and late season, summer and winter, that we share with the community the group pattern. And what that means is, if we know that there's a group of 500 people in town, but they're booked for all their meals, like they've scheduled them in the conference center or whatever, or have dine-arounds, that we share that and we go further and say, we know they're open for dinner. Like, they're not booked for dinner. They haven't prepaid it. So that each of the restaurants or retailers can make their business decision based on that information, that added layer of, because if we tell somebody there's a group of 500 in, but they've prepaid all their meals, they're not going to get any of that business.
Right.
Versus, the irony is that the groups that come early and late tend to be value-seeking groups, and they're less likely to include meals because they don't want to raise the price to come. And if you book breakfast, lunch, and dinner at, insert your name of a property here, that's going to really increase the price to come. So If, and I think the properties, based on our group sales advisory committee meeting, they have agreed to give us whether we've touched the group or not, because we don't touch all the groups. All the hockey groups that are at the Weston right now, we didn't book them. The Weston booked them directly. And they're putting, 4 kids in a room, and it's probably low rated. I don't know what their rate is. But the main properties have agreed to give us that information, whether we're involved in the booking or not, so that we can hopefully share that pattern, so that then each and every restaurant can make their decision. It's hard because even though we may have been in the 70s or 80s this past weekend, probably last Wednesday and Thursday, we weren't. And so for restaurants, retailers are a little different, but for restaurants, to keep product and to keep staff is really challenging if they don't know the business is coming. And, their food waste costs go up and things.
Even if they know it's coming, just having it 2 days out of 7 days is really difficult.
You
You've
know,
seen that
that-
chart from
Yeah.
Bros that goes up and down, and restaurateurs have told us a lot, like 2 days isn't enough.
And-
80% occupancy on Saturday and Sunday is not enough to keep us open.
And so what we can do is, A, we can provide better information. And then on the flip side, we can provide better information to the group so they know where to go. So they're not walking around Base Village when nothing's open there.
Right.
So that we can say, when they check in, here are the 4 places that are open. And hopefully that will actually give those people who have chosen to stay open more business, because it'll direct the people there. One of our one of our board members was saying that her staff, after Labor Day, just quits. So she doesn't have staff. And that makes it super hard to have that continuity. And so I don't think there's a silver bullet, but I do think that there are a number of things that we can all do, whether it's something as, I won't call it simple, but to announce, make a statement of, here are what we consider our season dates. Share that gather and share that information back out so that and then educate the consumer of where they should go. Maybe all that will help. It's just all shifting. September was busy. We this summer, we had a record-breaking May, June, July, August, and September. And I think that's just gonna, there's a lot of factors to that. But if that continues, we just hopefully will get more stability. Rumor has it that a number of the larger properties are going to start being open year-round, and that means their F&B outlets will be open year-round.
Right.
Yeah, I was wondering about that myself.
Yeah. From what I understand, in the 4 players, let's call them the 4 major players, they haven't all made that commitment, but they would probably close in April, but then from then on, go full year. Now, they can all change their mind, their budgets haven't been approved, whatever, but that's what the talk is. So,
I have noticed that the closing time in the fall seems to be shrinking a little.
very much
It used
so.
to be 6 weeks, now it's 4 weeks,
And I think what we can also do is, as we get this information, we can work with all of our other distribution systems so that those of us who are still here know what's open. Because, it would be great if all of us in the room and everybody who's listening, if we had a method, and, maybe what we do is use, whether it's our email list or Travis's email list, to go out to the community to say, here's what's open this fall. And really, so that locals know where to go, and hopefully that'll improve business. Because do you all know Black Saddle's open part of the week now? So not everybody, people don't even realize what's open. So those of us who live here. Okay.
thank you.
Apparently, that's all I have to say now. There we go. So our special events, our winter event strategy, we have some what I'll call tourism-led events. We partner with SkiCo on X Games and other SkiCo-led events. Then we have a bunch of, I'll call locally led events, whether it's the Snowmass Base Village opening that's going to happen on the 15th, and we're all in on helping that happen. Closing day. We do the Daily S'mores. We're planning on doing that again. And then we do small seasonal events like the VIK program and storytelling and all those kinds of weekly programming. In the summer, the majority are sort of what I would call tourism-led events. You know, the concerts, balloon festival, Fridays on the Mall. Then we obviously partner with some event producers, Ragnar, JS, Mutter. And again, we have the support, the locally led events, whether it's September Fest, Cider Mass, the local wine, the Rotary's Wine Festival. We work to promote those, and we have a bunch of small seasonal events in the summer as well, like s'mores and VIK programming and such. So that's kind of the events functions. When you look at, this is slightly revised from the packet as well, when you look at all of the money we spend in special events, and this includes dollars from the marketing fund, the group sales funds, and some capital, you can see year over year, it's gone up. Basically that $30,000 that I mentioned that we put in 2 extra concerts for next summer, the idea being that we would continue concerts sort of to Labor Day. We wouldn't take that gap. We have an event potential right now that would preclude us from being able to do that in 19 because the stage would need to be gone. So we're still working it out, but if we can, we have the budget to do it. The delta in the winter events is really the Grand Prix, is from what was budgeted to, that's the bulk of it. Town services is what we put into the, 150 of that is general fund money that we put in for additional services like transit during the concerts and things like that, or the concerts in any event, and then the other 10 is about picking up trash. So pretty much year over year, pretty similar. This year for winter, we're planning the Snowmass Base Village Grand Opening celebrations. East-West is spearheading that. What tourism is going to do is we're going to program Friday and Sunday so that people can make a weekend of it, and we're throwing in fireworks on Saturday night.
Oh, great.
So that's kind of that. We'll do holiday celebrations, decorations. We'll do holiday decorations for both Christmas and Hanukkah. We'll have New Year's Eve fireworks, the carolers, the letters to Santa kind of stuff we've done in the past. Mardi Gras in March this year, March 5th. The Hi-Fi concert series, we'll do one of them during the grand opening of Snowmass Base Village and one in March. Working on the closing weekend and trying to continue to build that up. Our monthly moonlit treks and the daily s'mores are all on deck, and I'm sure there'll be some others that pop in. In the summer, returning as we know it, will be the craft beer Ragnar demo days, the Def Camp, volleyball, doubles volleyball. The Vita mountain biking will do balloons. The wine festival will go on. CU, the Golden Leaf, CU and Snowmass, JAS and the rodeo. I mentioned what we have the idea of all the Thursdays plus the 2 bonus Saturdays, and maybe add 1 or 2 more weeks in August. Heritage Fire, Rustic Grind, Our Day Expo, Oat Route, the car race weekend are still to be determined. We're either negotiating or evaluating, I'd say it like that, getting feedback. We plan to expand 4th of July and really blow it out. It's a Thursday, so there'll be a free concert on Thursday. And then we'll do our community celebration, and that might include what we've done in the past of games and free desserts and things like that. But since it's a Thursday, we thought it would be, kind of make it spend a little more on the band that we can kind of blow it out a little bit. A little bit of a focus on improving the look, the processes, and the efficiencies. We got some good feedback on some new signage we put in, but I think we have more opportunities to improve that. So we've put some money in for that and to just improve the Fanny Hill experience overall. That's what's on target for that. Any questions on marketing or group sales? Or marketing or special events?
So we may not get Heritage Fire back next year?
Oh, no, I think we will. We're not.
Okay, you're not ready.
There's no reason for me to think we won't. We just we don't have the contracts on.
How about Tough Mudder?
Tough Mudder, we're not sure yet.
Okay.
We'd like to get them back. It looks like Skico would take them back because, they use so much of Aspen Skiing Company's land. Right now, we're trying to tie a nice ribbon around Tough Mudder that just happened, make sure they mitigate the trails, make sure we got all the snow, makes it a little more complicated. But before we talk to them about next year. We just want to make sure we have all of this year wrapped up. There was a wildlife issue, infringement, whatever. Yeah, that Saturday afternoon there was a hailstorm and everybody kind of ran from their
Yep.
post, and so they have a small fine for that. So we're just wrapping all that
Okay.
up. So we haven't quite gotten to negotiating for next year. I'd like to see them come back. It very much was a huge player in why August occupancy was up 22%. We took a weekend that was 37% and moved it into the 80s. I mean, so that timing worked really well. So hopefully we'll.
It is very stressful, right? It stresses our resources. Tough Mudder.
The biggest one's parking.
Parking for sure. I mean, I've never seen so many cars parked down at the Intercept lot.
Yeah, parking's the biggest one. I think the rest of them, speaking for transportation, police, I mean, we've got things wired in. We're doing a better job of it. We're getting way more used to it, but parking continues to be a difficult one, and that's a good problem to have. I mean, Rose doing these numbers last week or 2 weeks ago, the summer tourist is 75% more likely to drive, or whatever the number,
Yeah.
some incredibly more likely, and so that just impacts the lots, and that continues to be the Achilles heel for some of these larger events for us.
And I know it's difficult to totally check the dipstick on these events, you know, comparing our subsidy to the event to, I mean, what we're actually getting in sales receipts. But your feeling is that that is a worthy event?
Tough Mudder, I think, has a large footprint and a large impact, and it has a large impact on our receipts. I mean, I can tell you that weekend, we were able to negotiate with Tough Mudder, and we gave them two choices of weekends to come, and they were the 2 weekends of the lowest occupancy of the summer. And they made a change. So if you look at it again, from last year to this year, that same weekend, we were in the 30s, we were in the 80s, high 80s, 87%, I think 87 and 89% on Friday and Saturday nights. Other way around, 89 and then 87. So, I mean, coming from 35 and 37, I mean, it moved lots of people. So I think when we look at the impact, sort of cause and effect, right? the impact and the benefit, I would say that the retailers, the food and beverage establishments, and the lodging all feel like that is hands down brings tons of business to them. We don't get the tax receipts by date, but just that occupancy shift in August, I think a lot of it can be attributed to that weekend. And August tax numbers were up, 24% on lodge, 26% on lodging, and 24% on marketing, I think, was, if I remember correctly.
Is that the most heavily subsidized event?
No, JAS, concerts are by far the most expensive event we do. If you roll them all together, it is a huge component of our special events. Jazz, X Games costs far more than Mutter. And because this is a public forum, I'm hesitant to give you those numbers because I don't want to impact our ability to negotiate with all of our partners. But I think everybody knows what our contribution is to Jazz and what our contribution is to X. I mean, I don't think those are secrets. And Mutter is far less.
Okay.
And yet those are two big impactful events too. I mean, those fill town, both of those. And the concerts don't fill town, but everybody loves them.
Right.
Right? So
It's a feel good.
It's when we do our community survey, the townwide survey, it always comes up, if not the top, among the very top things that our residents, and I'll say, I don't even know if it's residents, the people who fill out the survey say, whoever fills it out, about things that the town does that are most appreciated as that concert series. And we've gotten a ton of good feedback on the fact they're back on Thursdays.
Yes.
Rose, is there any increase for JIS in 2019?
No, we renegotiated a 3-year deal in 2018. We held it to the same, and I think Clint might have shared with you a little bit of that at the time in terms of what our commitment, what we did is we kept our commitment flat, and it was kind of an increase for them because in the past they had we've done 3-year contracts with them, and 3 years ago the ticket values were calculated in, let's call it 2014 prices or 2015, whenever we did it 3 years ago, and this year they were at 2018 pricing. So they're giving us less from a ticket value. The ticket amount is the
Mhm.
same, but the number of tickets that becomes is
less.
less.
Right.
So we held our contribution flat. That being said, I think the town overall, with allowing them to do some work there, is probably, if you look at the whole town contribution, I don't know. Yeah.
You're talking about allowing for the second story.
Yeah,
We let them use the field, we let them put the caissons on, all that kind of stuff to add that second deck,
floor, yeah.
floor, whatever you want. So we've made some different contributions, not cash.
And our promotional value is pretty much the same. I mean, it's shifted a little. They used to do a big direct mail piece. Guess what? It's by email now. So, like, it's the marketing components are, I would say, similar. They're not exactly the same, but they're very similar.
So this contract would expire in 2021?
Two
That
more
is correct.
summers.
Yeah, so this was 18, 19, and 20. Were the 3 years. So we do not have a commitment to 21 at this point. I think, if I recall correctly, from 3 years ago, it was something that JAS had asked because it would really help them to secure other sponsorships by having this multi-year, with all the language that says we can get out of it. They could go to other sponsors to get that.
Okay, thank you.
Rose, as we talk about the connectedness between the base village and the mall, there's been some discussion about possibly moving the stage lower to make that connection. Have you guys explored that any further?
That's the first I've heard of it.
Really?
So,
Ooh,
Stage.
I've never
so
heard
I
that
don't know
either.
who had that conversation. It could have been with our events team, and I just
Yeah.
don't know about it. I haven't had that interesting thought. I haven't.
I mean, just that the back end of the public and the kids section is so far back up towards the Westin. If the stage was lower and that group was more towards the end of the mall, and we had that more connected feel from the base village, I don't know if there's land use issues on Fanny Hill.
I think that we mitigate the land use issues already by where the stage is. If we move the stage, what there is right off of the mall, there's as flat as that area gets, right? It's almost like that, as flat as Fanny Hill goes. And as you go down and you go up, it gets more pronounced, right? It's almost like that's a thoroughfare that's relatively flat. I haven't looked at the angle of the hill to see what would happen if we would lose sort of that in front of the stage flatness that we have right now.
Right.
I think that, to me, just off the top of my head, without really looking at it, that would be one thought I would want to make sure that we had.
Yeah, I guess the other way to look at it is you go put the stage on the lawn almost at the bottom, and then you make that whole area between the mall and the base village, kind of a park.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to disenfranchise the people on the mall, but I think that whole idea of connecting
Yeah.
the two would be,
I think it's, I don't want to take away another event venue that we have, which is the lawn, that we use just about every weekend either. So, let me look into that. I hadn't thought of that. I mean, as I said, first I hear of it.
We did look at that several years ago.
Did you?
Yes, and we really had a lot of pushback from the mall merchants. And also the lawn issue and the top of the Skittles.
Yeah.
So probably John might remember this, it's 4 or 5 years ago when we were dealing with Mr. Who.
We dealt with Mr. Hool. We pay him annually.
Yeah, we pay him, but there was quite a bit of work done.
And that's why I feel like we mitigate it anyway, so I think
Yeah.
whether we move 10 feet down or 20, we're paying to be there.
Right.
So I don't think that would be as much of an issue as the physical. I think it's worth taking a look at. I'm almost thinking that what a balance would be you come in mid-arena instead of at the bottom of the arena, right? So that the stage would be down.
right.
Just shifted it all not to get it all the way down to Base Village, but just,
Right.
you know,
Even if it was
It's
at
like
the
if you
top of
come
the
in
access.
Where the Westin is. Like, that's what you're saying, like, make it
yeah,
mid.
if you would come in mid venue versus right now you come in at the bottom of the venue.
Right.
So you're suggesting that we look at if you could come in further down, further up the venue, so the stage would be further down.
Right.
And yeah, I think
I mean,
it's
we have so many issues with people parking in the numbered lots, right, during the concerts, so we don't have our lodge people. So if it was lower and the focus was lower, maybe we'd get more people into the garage and utilize
yeah.
not filling up those upper lots.
I think it's worth looking at. I mean, I don't know if we could get anywhere with it, frankly, but it's
Yeah,
worth,
I think it's worth
yeah.
kicking around.
yeah, we can take a look at that.
Okay, let's move on and get back on budget.
Okay. Group sales. Group sales functions are really lead generations, trade shows, sites and FAMs, client events, concessions and promotions for the community. We've implemented a new group sales advertising campaign to targeting meeting planners. And with our group sales advisory committee, they've suggested that we do some road shows and also some sales training. And we're going to do, it's not on here because we're going to actually get it done this year, at least the start of it. So the group sales budget also slightly revised on the right, just from the revenue number changes. In 2018, we're going to have this $220,000 reduction in payroll and related expenses because we weren't fully staffed.
Right.
And so we spent a little bit more on contract labor, but we had spent a lot less in payroll, and I'm super happy to say we're fully staffed now. That's why I'm going on vacation. Yeah. And then because we were not fully staffed, we'll realize some savings in 2018 on trade shows and sites, and then we shifted some of that savings money to get the advertising campaign done. And the idea was that is while we weren't fully staffed, at least we could try to get something to get the phone to ring when we were fully staffed. You'll see that the big shift in payroll is that it's fully staffed. So
Right.
we took that number down, and similarly, the other numbers came down because of the staffing. And then the office and related expenses is lower because we didn't pay, we don't anticipate contractors. That falls into that bucket. That was in 2018.
In terms of selling to large groups or any size group, to what extent has the construction?
Group sales are so important. Group sales we've got groups booked now into 2024. So
Wow.
this means that, 5 and 6 years ago, we had groups booked now. They didn't know about construction. They also didn't know that last year we weren't going to have snow, right? So those people are dialed in, and I can't overstate how important that is for all of us, because they've got commitments, they've got contracts with the properties that they can't get out of. If they cancel, they have to pay anyway, right? And it also, so it creates this base of bookings. And then the properties, even the properties that don't have the group, because they don't have group space or whatever, there's compression in the village. And so theoretically, they can raise their rates, and there's supply and demand takes over, right? And so from that perspective, I haven't felt that we've had that much impact on a group perspective from construction.
Good.
And I think the people who are coming now to book groups are like, wow, that's going to be finished by the time my groups get here. So it's kind of that, it's really worked well. You all wisely put some funds from East-West as a commitment to marketing to keep that message alive. And that was really based on, if you recall, that when Base Village first started being constructed, that was what our competitors told everybody.
Exactly. That we were
Right
closed.
now, we are getting a ton of great press. I mean, this $600 million investment across the street is the largest ski area development in North America. And that's how it's being positioned. I don't know if you all saw Forbes magazine's article about Base Village. 5280 should come out any day now
Right.
with the November issue. So I think right now it's like the light, the pot of gold is at the end, right? And the light's at the end of the tunnel, whatever one of those expressions I'm mixing up, right? And so I think it's just good news from, in fact, one of the things we're doing with group sales is we're bringing a familiarization trip of meeting planners plus potential clients to the Snowmass Base Village grand opening.
Oh, great.
So
That's
we'll
good.
have a number of influential, and the nice thing is we've got our new group sales director, who's doing a great job, so far, week 3, it has been able to work with one of our third parties to make sure that it's a meeting planner plus a potential customer. So we have a real opportunity to showcase what's going on there. Questions? Look at that. That's what I got. Questions? So I'm very happy to let you know that our marketing group sales and special events advisory committee on September 19th passed this budget, recommending that you all approve this budget as well as our business plan. So
Were there any relevant issues that we ought to be
we had
acknowledging?
one abstention from the budget, from the vote. But other than that, everybody was for it. I think that, there's been I guess the talk at the group, at the advisory board has been to dig deep and make sure we're measuring the right things and what are the right metrics to measure. Right now, there are, in our business plan, there are some specific metrics that we do. We do a comparison to other ski areas that we pay into a service that provides us a lot of data. Among the data is where we fit among the 17 or 16, depending on, their contracts, different resorts. We find out where we are. We know where Aspen is because we buy that together. We don't know who's who of the other 14 or 15 resorts. And so our goal is to be, in the summer, continue to improve our rank as to where we are in terms of occupancy and average daily rate. And in the winter, to maintain our rank. Often, like I think in February, we had number 1 occupancy for February and April last year among all the resorts. We were number 2 in March, and I think number 3 in January. So we just want to, there's not a lot of room for improvement there. We want to keep that. And in the summer, we've seen that continually pop up in terms of where we are with occupancy. Our rate in the summer is still, not, our winter rate is very strong. Our summer rate has still, again, room to improve. We have metrics around occupancy numbers. We have metrics around average daily rate and RevPAR, which is an industry term for revenue per available room. And so I think some folks on the board want to see, they want to explore, are we tapping into all the right metrics? Are there other metrics we should be doing? It's all of that data that is compiled is not a result of what Snowmass Tourism does. It's a result of what our community does. And I always stress that it takes a village. It's not just us doing that. We've been able to move the needle with some specific concessions and promotions. We saw that March next year was soft in the group booking. We went to, and then similarly, looking at our staffing levels this past year and the challenges and people out of the office on leave or resign, whatever. We threw a package out there that said Snowmass Tourism would provide a $10 rebate for groups that booked by a certain time for March 1st through April 21, because it's a super long season. We probably got 10 groups out of that.
Oh.
So we are willing to fund, but the sales teams of all the properties went out and tried to sell that. So it takes a village. So I think that in that figuring out what to measure, is it our ad or our efforts versus the whole community? I think that's the squishy part, right?
It's very squishy.
It's very squishy. I feel like it's our responsibility to, and again, not everything we do has an ROI of heads and beds. The concerts are a perfect example.
Right.
That is not what the objective is for that, is to get heads and beds, but it's a super great thing that we can bring to our community. Is it a fantastic amenity for visitors? 100%. Is it really the driving force? Who we do it for is not for visitors, is for locals. And when we tried to tweak that a few years ago to make it more about groups and switch the dates,
That didn't go well, did it?
we got some great feedback on that, which we listened to carefully and shifted. And I think that's, as long as we can stay close to our stakeholders and community members and listen and say, you know, what do the group sales folks, not just on our team? We're putting together this training now there's been a not an insignificant shift among the people who sell Snowmass, you know, at all the properties, not on our team too, but just everywhere. And so in our group sales advisory committee, it was recommended that we do a sales training. We're going to do it in November. And we got a company that was recommended by the Viceroy, and the Viceroy, you know, when they send their folks to this, is $1,800 per attendee to go, and we'll do it complimentary for the sales folks here, and it'll cost us, you know, 10 grand for the whole community, and we'll have 25 or 30 sales. So I think that's where we're like listening to what people need and saying, yes, we can react to this and offer value. And
Wonderful.
is there a specific ROI on that? You know, so I think that's where what the board is hearing is what parts of it. I think that the board has also identified a few areas that they think are really important for council to focus on, and how that comes to you, I'm not sure yet, but whether it's parking or employee housing, because for us as a community to deliver the service levels and that they feel like those are among the important things, or the Skittles, and so to what extent and what's the best vehicle for our board to have a voice to you, to, you know, we have a housing department that, but as business, as a representative of the business community, they feel that maybe there's an opportunity to communicate what they see as important things for council to focus on. So that's kind of what's.
I have two more questions.
I have some questions on the,
On the budget?
yeah.
Go
Okay.
for it.
Well,
Stump the chump.
Go ahead.
Let's go.
You ask your,
Yeah.
go ahead.
to what extent did the lost forest impact our summer tourism?
I don't think I'm speaking out of school, because I went to a public presentation where SKICO said that their visits were up 108% or something like that at the Lost Forest, so that's not insignificant. I think that their bike park doubled in use, which is fantastic. I think that number was 188%, and that was sometime in early August, I think, or early September is when I heard that data. Again, it was a public presentation, so I'm not sharing their secrets. But, so I think that was significant. I think there's
That's
a lot
huge.
of folks that are coming, and I think I commend Aspen Skiing Company. I think how they deliver that experience has been phenomenal. You go up there, and if any of you were up there, just listening to people who participated, they're super psyched. The kids, one more ride on the coast, one more, you know, people are having a good time. So that's super good, I think.
Can I chime in on something about that? I mean, I do think it's really awesome, because I did go up there and I took Eli with me, and he had the best time. But one thing that I have heard a lot from local people is that it's really cost prohibitive for people that live here. Like, for those of us whose kids want to go, and that why SKICO, you know, doesn't offer some sort of punch pass for the local kids, or if you're connected with ABSC, you get some sort of discounts. I mean, I just think that going forward, it is a good move, because if you get people up there, inevitably they're going to eat and they're going to drink and they're going to do whatever while their kids are riding the coaster. And I hate that it discourages because it's so expensive. I mean, even Uller nights. I mean, you know, when you live here, you can't take your kid all the time to do that. You may never even take them again after they've been once. It's just too expensive. And maybe there's limitations, and, you know, it's got like blackout dates that you can't use it on at really high times, like July 4th or Christmas or whatever it is. But I think going forward, that's really something that they're missing out on.
You know, I think that this was a big learning year for them. You know, I can't speak for them, but I do know that they're looking at a lot of things. The zip line sold out every single session, all summer long. So the price isn't too high.
No,
So-
I think it's fine if you're on vacation, you're more
Right.
willing to spend it. I just think for local people whose kids may want to ride the coaster often or do whatever, it's just a shame that they can't offer some kind of deal that's
Yeah.
catered more towards local families.
And they may, as again, this was a big test year for them.
Right. Well, they don't do it in the winter.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying, I think that it could benefit them.
Yeah, you may want to give that feedback directly back to them.
Yeah.
My other question is Skittles.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we continue to hear, well, the Skittles is too short, it's too long. But anyway, to me, the kids, every time I'm over by the Skittles, the kids want to get on it and just ride around. So
It's true.
I've never really heard from
It's a
the
child
tourists.
occupier.
It's a kid's ride. Sorry. But
You know, and lots of families, if you come out on a weekend, you see a lot of families taking their kids, the little ones, to ski, just using the Skittles as a lift.
Right.
Because it's free and you, depending on, I mean, 6 and under ski free anyway, but it's a way for a parent to bring out a little one and ski. I think that the Skittles, I think about it as moving a group. And I think for us, the ability to move a group between the mall and Base Village, so that if you went to a conference and, you could offer session 1 is you need to be at the mall level, and for session 2, you need to be down at the Base Village level, and it could move 200 people in 10 minutes that you have between sessions. That would be good. So that would be my goal with the Skittles, is that you could have a group movement. It is the biggest lift line in Snowmass after ski school.
it is.
I mean, it is, for sure.
Kids love
It's
it.
horrible.
The line's long, but kids love it.
So I don't know what your question really
Well,
is.
you know, the question becomes the delicate balance of our perception versus community and guest statements about the Skittles.
Yeah, I think.
I don't know if we've got any tool that we've measured that from our tourists.
No, we don't. There's a really interesting new survey tool that I've been thinking about if there's a way. It's, you may have seen it. They use it a lot at like airports and baseball stadiums and things, and it's just 4 buttons, and it's happy or not. Like, you can be from a smiley face to a sad face, and you just touch the button, which one you want, which one you are. People use that real-time information to send staff somewhere, right? If there's a big line at the hot dog stand at Fenway Park over here, they move it, they get more people over there. But it might be an interesting thing. I mean, your anecdotes are that kids don't care, they just like it. I don't know a lot of adults who like it.
Well, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I think too, I do think at the really high peak times, like Ski Code does do a good job of trying to people please the people that are in line by passing out stuff, whether it's cider or hot chocolate or bars, which helps. I mean, it doesn't make the line any shorter, but it does help. But it's not fun. I mean, I myself go down and take the bus. It's faster.
Well, yeah, some people don't want to.
Right. Well, if you're carrying like a ton of skis and boots, I mean, why you don't want to do that?
I think we're going to learn so much this winter with the new Base Village. I mean, I think there's so much to be learned. We just don't know how that's going to function and how it's going to feel and look. And I don't know how we would measure it, but that's an interesting thought. We don't really do that many surveys in the winter, but Ski Co does, and I'm sure that they'd be willing
It'd
to
be
add a
interesting to
question
do it, yeah.
about, the Sky Cab performance
yeah.
into their. I'll follow up with them on that.
Bob, I know you had questions on numbers.
Yeah, so, I guess, just in general, first question, in looking at the marketing fund and the group sales, budget summaries, the budgeted 2018 is the same as the projected 2018, yet in revenues, we're ahead of we're ahead of 2017. And it didn't appear as if that we're going to project any more than we did, if budgeted for 2018. And even the same thing is true of the expenditures, where the budget number for 2018, it looks like it's the same as the projected. And that confuses me because we've typically been budgeting higher than our expenditures tend to come in. So that kind of confuses me.
So if you look at, that little box
Yeah,
that I showed,
yeah,
the revenue, so in the group sales fund, we did do some revisions to the projected expenditures to take out that $221,000 in payroll that we were gonna come under.
mm-hmm.
And this is, and I don't know which number,
I guess I'm looking at, I'm looking at this sheet.
39 of 84 in our packet, or page 52.
I don't know, hold on, I'll tell you in a sec.
Are you talking marketing fund? or-
Yeah, I'm talking, well, it's the same,
Right.
39 of 84, yes, Marky,
Yeah,
that's
that's
right.
well,
So it looks like the figures that you used for the, this presentation are different than the figures on this
Mhm,
line item summary.
Right.
okay,
So-
so for marketing fund,
Yep,
so I kind of bucket them. Let me go back to the marketing fund here. So here,
yeah.
right? So,
Well, I mean, I can see already that you have, well, I think you already have,
number-
you
yeah.
already have different numbers up
Which-
there.
Yes.
That's what, yeah, go ahead.
Well, that's what she brought up at the beginning of her presentation, was that she was using numbers from August, because those were the numbers she used for her board presentation,
Yeah,
and that's what made the packet. And I caught that today, so she revised them, and see up at the top, she says revised from what's in your
so I really
packet.
can't make much use out of this stuff.
no, but
It's just
that
the
should match
$35,000.
this.
Yeah,
That should
these are
match
correct.
this.
These numbers are what's in your budget packet as well. These
So
are the
if you
correct
look
numbers.
at, where it says total revenues 5.28 for 19 proposed,
Yeah,
this is what that 5.278 for 19
So,
proposed.
yeah, what you've got in front of you is accurate. That's what we're using the budget. She just updated the pretty
Th-
pictures.
This pie chart.
okay.
So,
So you can't
So-
use this.
But, so is the 2018 projected, in terms of revenues, is the projected revenue for 2018 in excess of the budget?
We did not change the sales tax or the lodging tax numbers from what was budgeted in 18.
Between 18 and 19?
18 stayed as they were budgeted.
Okay.
When we did the budget for 19, we took our year-to-date through June,
Mm-hmm,
and then we said, okay, we're gonna use the actuals, and then we're just gonna add the remaining budget for the year to get our 18 projected,
okay.
and then added 3% to that to get our 19
So,
numbers.
so it was just coincidental that the actual revenue through June plus the budgeted revenue for the last 6 months came out to be the same as the budget?
No, we did not, see, okay, in this projected column,
Yeah,
we did not change the revenue number. On the backside, when we were trying to figure out what to project for 19, we did that in our worksheets. We didn't change these, because we're not actually revising these numbers formally.
okay.
They're just to kind of,
So Mary Ann, so at the end of the year, if there is an additional revenue above budget, we have to then make
It goes to fund balance.
a fund balance, right?
It goes, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so the reason why I'm asking this question, and I'm kind of being stubborn about it, but the reason I'm asking this question is because when for 2019, the proposal is to take $200,000 for CIP, which is an additional 100 over what we have been taking.
Mm-hmm.
And when we take that 200,000 against all the 2019 proposals, all right, we end up with basically $279,000 of funds available. Which means to me that in 2019, for the 2020 budget, we're gonna be running out of funds, additional funds to use for CIP in the marketing budget. right? We're pretty much gonna be running out of them. So my concern is, or my thought is, to take this $200,000 for CIP for 2019 and take it above the line and not below the line. Follow me?
I follow you.
Okay? And
You'll have to give me.
if there's more, if there's funds in the 2018 projected revenue, in addition to what we had budgeted, right, that would help to reduce, to reduce that, or provide some additional funding to fill that $200,000 above the line.
Bob, if I can.
Yep.
So what you see on the left here
Yep.
is what the adopted budget is for 18,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
My little box tells you you're going to come in 200 under budget in expenses.
In expenses.
So you've got your 200 right there.
Right.
And those 200 are because, these are round numbers.
Yeah, right.
Right? And we talked about it. And, you know, the winter events, we budgeted in 18, but we were
Mhm.
able to pay for the majority of the Grand Prix in 17, in
Okay.
the 17, 18. We had that Sports Illustrated $66,000, which we did not spend.
Yep.
Which we budgeted in 19, but we didn't spend it. We had $10,500 that we didn't pay out in rebate that we had budgeted. We had $18,000 in office supplies we didn't spend. We had $25,000 in Ice Age that we weren't going to spend. So all of that is about $200,000. And when I could clean it, that was as of August, if I cleaned it up again, you know, but Marianne felt that we didn't need to do a projected 18, but I kind of did that as a little cheat sheet,
Yeah.
because we're coming in under budget.
Well,
So that should find that 200,
okay.
if that makes sense.
I-
Plus,
yeah, no.
plus the revenue increase.
It makes total sense, but that's why I'm looking for a projected number.
Yeah.
Because it helps when we're starting to run out of, available funds. It's important to have a projection, an accurate projection,
Yeah.
to understand that. So I guess I'm back to, there are gonna be additional funds available
Right,
by the time we get to the end of the year, based on what we know.
right, 479 is what you
Because of,
have.
yes, because of conservative fiscal management, not spending money when we don't have to. I mean, and that's when you look at that 2019 or 2018 budget, or 2019 budget, I'm sorry, I'm looking on 41 of 84 in the red. And I think this is what you're talking about, Counselor Circus.
Yeah.
Right, we're projected to bring in $5,278,000 of revenue next year in the marketing fund. Right now, with the way we've got the expenditures lined up, we've got $5.2 million of expenditures. So there's $77,000 we don't have allocated for expenditures next year.
Right.
And you're saying, well, we should add that 200 above the line.
Yep.
So we'd be showing a $133,000 loss.
Correct.
And what we essentially do that, but by putting it below the line, we're showing the ongoing revenue, ongoing expense, because that capital, if it didn't show up, we wouldn't spend it. If all of a sudden it didn't snow in December,
Mm-hmm.
God forbid.
then we would have it below the line, and we're keeping that ongoing revenue and
Okay.
expense lined up. And that's the way all the funds are set up that way.
Fine, and let me just say that if the projected numbers for 2018
Mhm.
had been in here,
Mm-hmm.
then we probably wouldn't be having this discussion, because instead of having $77,000 left over,
You would
or
still,
instead of having $42,000 left over in 2018, we would have a lot more. We'd have $242,000
Mm-hmm.
but it would,
projected to be left in 2018.
but it would still just roll over into the fund balance or the funds available. And the 200,000,
Yeah, but
since it's discretionary and below the line, would just come over that fund balance. So the net effect would just mean that funds available, the 279 that's showing in 19, would just be higher.
right,
And it's gonna be higher however we end the year, or it could be lower however we end the year, And we just don't know that. We can project it.
In all honesty,
higher.
I mean, it takes away some of the flexibility. If we did it your way, then we would have more money on the books and there'd be more money being spent.
The reason I'm projecting this in this particular case is because when we get within 1 year of our CIPs, with funds available, I get nervous.
Yeah, no, but you go down to that ending balance. It's almost $1.6 million in the ending balance.
Yeah, but only 279,000 is available to use for other things. The other part is the
Discretionary.
25,000,
Discretion.
that's
the 25% that we're
That's
trying
over
to
and-
keep.
But that's over and above all the other reserves we've got in place.
So if there was a, God forbid, a low snow year,
Right.
and our revenues weren't coming in to cover those expenses, and we know we need to do marketing in order to keep people coming here, that's what your reserve dollars are there for, the 1.3 million. We
Right.
wouldn't put that 200,000 into the CIP.
Okay. You know what, I mean, I think it would, I'm better off having this discussion offline.
Yes.
Because, so I will do that. We'll talk about that a little bit more.
Okay.
And that may be the biggest question
It flows over to the group sales too.
in all of this.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the biggest, because that's the biggest question
And-
that I have.
And it's a fair philosophical question,
in a
and our
way-
approach has been to kind of box it in a little bit, make sure we kind of keep everything in check.
Right,
And if
I
it shows
hear
up
you.
better, and that's a philosophical, we
But
can
it's
discuss
just-
Thursday.
I have a level of concern about the next couple of years where we seem to eat up our funds over and above what we require of ourselves to put into reserve, to hold in reserve.
What?
Well, we're telling ourselves
We put 25%.
to
25%.
yeah, to save 25% and put it into a reserve fund,
Correct.
okay? And so the funds available are the funds above that 25%.
Correct.
So the way I look at it is, you don't touch that 25% unless you got a real problem,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
So when we get down to a year's worth of CIP in the funds available, that starts to give me concern.
Yeah, and I think what we can do, I mean, we can do this on Thursday a little bit too, but we can show you that culmination,
Mhm.
accumulation of reserves, and I think you're gonna feel, in the group sales fund, I think there's over $1 million in those funds available. When you go to, and I'm going off the top of my head, but there are dollars available over and above that 25%.
Okay, well,
And so I
cover
think
it
we're
on
saying the
Thursday.
same thing, we're just using different words.
we'll cover it Thursday.
Okay, any other questions for Rose? Good,
Not from me.
good presentation.
Thank you
Thanks,
all,
Rose.
thank you all
Thanks,
for your
Rose.
support,
Rose.
always.
Thanks, Rose.
Bon voyage.
Enjoy your vacation.
Thank you.
Where you going, Rose?
Can I go? You
Where-
guys, you
where-
guys are
where you
good? I
go-
can go on
where you
vacation?
going?
Where you going?
I'm going to Europe.
Well,
I'll be in Italy. I'll be in Sicily, a part of it,
Oh, good.
so.
okay, it's 5:45, and next item on the agenda is a marijuana regulation discussion. Would you like to take a 5-minute break before we,
I'd love to.
would.
Sure.
10 minute? Okay. Okay, take a break. we're back in session. Clint, Travis, the maps, your drafts, lots of maps,
Lots of maps.
okay?
And here's one more for you. So this is a continuation of our conversation to review the draft regulatory framework for retail marijuana stores. Specifically where we left off last time were location restrictions and proximity buffers to sensitive areas such as child care facilities, Challenge Aspen, and Skittles in the ski area, the Base Village Plaza.
We're back in session. Clint, Travis, the maps,
Is that me?
your drafts, lots of
Right, me.
maps.
That was weird.
I've done that before. You'd think I'd learn.
I didn't know what was going on.
Oh, are you playing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm
You're
listening.
just for Travis's computer playing
I
back.
don't know. Just a quick mic check.
Quite the ventriloquist.
She's like, it was pretty cool. Do it again. Say something really smart. So I
Where's
hear-
the little
so it says it
dummy on
twice.
your lap?
That way, if I say something stupid, I can, correct myself.
You will not say anything stupid.
So what we've done since the last time we met was prepared a series of maps, which was in your packet today. These included all kinds of different options for you to consider, as well as what we ended up with was a series of maps with recommendations. So these recommendations were kind of a culmination of our previous conversations, as well as what we've heard from the community, and recommendations that we've received from people such as our marketing board. These are just, of course, recommendations. We thought it'd be kind of a useful starting point for you all to consider.
And would you be so kind, so our listening audience knows what they're looking at?
Absolutely. So yeah, let's go ahead and walk through those. First and foremost, we started with a 300-foot proximity buffer from child care facilities. Those two locations are the Weston Kids Club and the Treehouse down here in Base Village. We also have a 100-foot buffer shown here from Challenge Aspen, located on the mall. And then we started to talk about the Skittles gondola area and kind of where the kids ski course is here on Fanny Hill. And so we have a 200-foot buffer? I believe so. 200-foot buffer from the center line of the Skittles gondola, shown here. In addition to this big red line going up and down the ski hill, which is a 100-foot buffer from the slope side and ski back trail. We also have the plaza area located in Base Village with a 300-foot buffer shown. And then something we actually haven't discussed in previous conversations is this 200-foot buffer from Brush Creek Road.
So, in order to orient all of us, so we have Challenge Aspen, and before we had talked about down towards the bowling alley and then that section of second floor of the mall, an area there for 300 or 500. Where would that be? Where would that be on the second level? Is it?
So if we zoom in on the Snowmass Mall here, this is the main pedestrian walkway of the Snowmass Mall,
Okay.
which you'll recall in our draft regulations, we are prohibiting stores from locating on that main level. However, a store could hypothetically locate up on the second level. So while this 100-foot buffer from Challenge Aspen's front door would kind of eliminate the possibility of a store locating on this deck space, it would still leave the possibility of, you mentioned the bowling alley where it's kind of a subfloor area. That could certainly be one possible location, as well as all of these second floor locations and possibly some locations on Elbert Lane and Daly Lane.
So that building that houses like the, I forget what you call it, but the flower shop and the salon, that cannot be utilized, right? That's
Right.
in the red?
I
That's that
believe
building?
That's the flower shop, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
That's slow
That would
grooving.
be within, what we're recommending would be a 300-foot buffer from the kids club in the Weston.
That almost looks like slow grooving.
I believe Slow Groovin's here.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's.
Oh, okay,
It's kind of
okay,
their patio area. And
okay,
front
yeah.
door's about here.
Okay.
One of the changes that we are proposing in this draft to be considered is when we first did these restrictions, we were trying to do the restrictions via walking path, and it got really difficult for us to do those measurements. So these restrictions are proposed to be as the crow flies, so these circles would be very accurate. And then the 300-foot restriction between different stores would be through walking paths. And again, those are just discussions for you all to give us direction on. But if it was via walking in that red circle, it would be a much shorter, a much smaller radius circle. So we thought, to make it clear and accurate, we're proposing these restrictions to be as the crow flies, or to have these red circles be accurate.
Travis, on every one of the maps, we still, the kids' childcare at the Weston, is it 300 feet on all of the maps?
We did provide a 500-foot option just
Right,
to
I
show
thought
what that
there
would
was-
look like.
You want to
That was
pull
on
that
the-
one up?
I think that was attachment B. But I can also throw that up on the screen.
I wanted to see what the difference, because that restriction is kind of puts a damper on a lot of the potential.
I don't know, you still have Albert?
So that's 300 feet.
That's 300
That would be
feet.
500 feet.
That's 500 feet, and you pretty much knocked everything
You
out.
knock everything out at 500 feet.
Can you pull that up as to what would be possible then?
Go with bird's eye. Get on top of it.
That's this one.
The child care facility in the Weston is actually inside the building, correct?
Yes.
So there's,
And it's from, but we looked at it, the point of demarcation is from the threshold of the actual operation, not the front door of the Weston, but where the facility is in the Weston.
right.
So that's why it's further up the hill, basically.
So to answer your question, Mayor Butler, I guess on the Snowmass Mall, it would just leave a sliver here.
You take that off real quick.
So,
So that's the 300-foot. It shows the middle part of the mall being available, and you put the 500 feet on, the majority of the mall goes away.
so I don't understand the rationale on the childcare facility within the Weston. I would think it should be measured from the doors into the Weston.
So our rationale was because the facility is a licensed facility, and we went from the area, the licensed facility, not from the business itself. The Weston is the larger business, the licensed facility is much smaller for childcare, and we went from that front door. That was the logic.
But I still have to walk through the front door to get my kid to the childcare facility.
Yes. Well, I don't know, there's a lot of doors, but that, I mean, again, we're just trying to make recommendations,
But
places that we thought.
You're clear from the front door, substantially from the front door.
If you do 500, 300, you're not that far. Right?
Where do you think the front door is? It's
So this,
there, right?
you can barely see it here, but the black triangle is where the actual front door of the kids club is located in the Weston,
So
as opposed to the front door of the Weston itself, which would be more down here. So just kind of move that red circle down.
And people who are using that are primarily staying at the Weston.
Yeah, from what I understand, it's kind of a amenity they offer to their guests.
Right. So this, to me, this seems like a non-issue.
What's a non-issue?
This childcare facility and
The
putting
front-
it, and
Well, I
putting a
wouldn't say it's
300-foot,
non-issue.
and putting a 300-foot barrier around it. I mean, the people that are utilizing it are inside the hotel. They're not gonna be walking past.
Are they also using for the adjacent hotel?
I'm
'Cause
not
that's-
sure. I'm
that's
sure they
managed.
open it up.
We We went with licensed childcare. We have to, that's the restrictions we used. We didn't go into an analysis of who's actually using it. But we're trying to be consistent with that licensed childcare.
I mean, they don't even offer it year-round. It's strictly during peak season. I think just the winter season, actually. So I assume it's for their guests.
My question is, they manage the property next door.
Right.
So,
But yeah, we're not trying to determine who's using it. We're going to the front threshold of the licensed facility. So we've got the front door of Treehouse, we've got the front door, and the front threshold of that licensed facility in the Weston.
okay.
And 300 feet's what seemed to be, reasonable for both of those.
And we've changed it to as a crow fly versus up and down.
For
Why
these
do we do
restrictions,
that?
that's our proposal, because that way these maps are accurate. Otherwise, we'd have to start walking and it'd be a lot more difficult to show it.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
So, I've spent a lot of time looking at this, and generally, I really like the recommendations that you guys gave. I feel like even though I want it to be a 500-foot circumference, I'm being realistic, and I'm fine with the 300 from the childcare. But this is the problem that I have, is that there's no way to really understand. I mean, okay, let me start again. I know that you guys seem to think that, okay, if you limit, if you put these restrictions in, it'll automatically sort of limit the amount of stores. But I don't really think that's true. And I am really concerned, and I talked to Clint about this today, along Carriage Way, from like the Tamarack up, there are lots of little pockets that exist that could go commercial or have an office in them, and that really bothers me. And so I feel like, in my mind, we need to limit the amount of stores, and that these restrictions don't necessarily take into account any of those potential places along Carriage Way that it could go. I mean, I would not be thrilled if I was driving up Carriage Way and there, sitting where the Wildwood Lodge is the pot shop right there. I mean, it just really bothers me. And I don't think the answer is to put in a buffer, because if you add another buffer, then you're leaving no space. So I'm being realistic to that, but I think that we really need to consider limiting the amount of shops.
Which is exactly what Ann Mullins suggests. And last Thursday night, we were sitting with a council person from Steamboat. She said, start small. Whatever you do, start small and limit the number when you first get started.
Well, so are you guys suggesting that we limit the number, but we don't have the buffer zones?
No. I'm suggesting
so-
that you
so-
take
You do
these
accommodations.
recommendations.
Okay, so let's do one thing at a time then, okay? Let's work through the buffer zones, see where we have agreement, and then where we don't. And when we get through the buffer zones, then we can discuss the concept of,
Right, I
you know,
get
of the
that, but
number of
the
shops.
problem I have with the buffer zones is if I was outnumbered on people wanting to limit the number of shops, then I would say we need to consider a buffer zone on Carriage Way.
I
I mean,
understand,
that's my issue.
I understand.
I also feel like, I know that Travis updated the map because there wasn't that consideration for the ski-back trail near the Viceroy, but that commercial, which hasn't been built, and I don't know if it'll ever be built, but that, in that green section, Travis, across from Viceroy, I know that there's commercial slotted in that green section in between the two red sections. So, and that is Base Village, and that's fine. I'm not taking an issue with it potentially being there, but I just, that is a commercial area in Base Village. I don't think the Viceroy is gonna put it on their property. But anyways, I'm fine with that.
Well, I'm not fine with the second section of, along that walkway or where the little cart goes.
Well, it would I mean, I think it should follow the same restrictions as the mall, which is that it should be on the second level. I don't think that it should be on any level that people are walking through as
Those
a
are rooms,
thoroughfare.
those are shops then.
Well, then I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Well, that's, on one side of that walk path is, I think, Building 9, and the other side is 10A and B. So 10A and B has our F&B and retail.
That's
On the
10A
first
and B,
floor.
but this is 10A and B.
Yeah,
Yeah.
This is 11.
Oh, 11? I'm
Nine's
sorry.
gone.
okay.
That's 11. Same, but
11.
you're talking about, you're right, Bill.
This is 11.
And is there that sliver of 8? Is that what that is on the other side?
This is 8.
But what's that? I mean, that green,
Green here?
yeah.
That's the courtyard of 8.
But that green would be available, that sliver of 8 would be a potential.
But is there any retail down there?
Oh, that's where the clinic is,
Right.
in this end of 8.
Oh, no, that's in the restriction, I'm sorry. Yeah, so there's a little sliver that's
Right
not,
there,
it's a little
that
sliver
building?
right there that could be some kind of potential.
I don't think there's any commercial zone in 8 except
don't-
up here.
I mean, but it's not
Okay.
out of the restriction.
Well, let's get it in the restriction. The courtyard of Building 8, come on,
This,
no.
there's
So
no
let's-
structures there, there's not gonna be, there's no approved structure for that area right here.
So Alyssa did make a good point that I failed to mention that we added the ski back trail restriction. So that was
So-
not in the packet, but we did print out updated
So where,
versions.
Travis, where you have the pointer right now, what is that?
The ski back trail.
Ski back trail.
When we,
Remember last time, Bob, we talked about 100 feet, when I was talking, I said I didn't want ski in, ski out pot shops
Yeah,
off the
right.
Fanny Hill. So
Right.
we said 100 feet. So Travis forgot to apply this to this part of the ski back trail.
in
It's
the
not that
package,
we have to do it, but it's part of
the
the
package you got on
discussion.
Friday, or Thursday, it didn't have that little segment in it.
Yeah, I understand.
Oh,
No,
that's it.
I do, I did notice that.
I'm fine with that.
So the ski back trail goes past,
Get on that.
I mean, where does it go? That's the back, does it
Goes
go
all the way
past
to-
the backside of the
Limelight.
Limelight?
Yes.
This
Yes.
goes all the way to SA Hill.
Right.
Other way.
And it goes all the way down to Assay
Say
Hill?
Right.
Zoom out.
There you go. And so the
Comes
the
right
concept you guys
through
talked about,
here.
no one wanted ski in, ski out shops.
Yeah,
I mean, if we didn't have the ski back in there, the potential could be there, I guess, and that's why we made sure that that ski back was included in all the slope side restrictions.
does that go all the way down past the enclave?
That, ski back doesn't
Enclave's
go by
way
the
up here.
enclave.
Enclaves up above.
Right
This
there's
is
the
ski
enclave.
area.
Oh, yeah, okay. So it goes down, I don't know, what part of, it's not Assay Hill. Assay Hill's to the left.
This is SA, this is
Let's-
all,
Yes, it does.
Timbers.
no,
I know
this
where-
is enclave.
That's the enclave.
Right.
So that's Assay.
This is all SA.
Yeah.
But I'm really looking at the other piece.
Up here,
This is,
No, to the right. That piece right there.
that's where,
ski back.
that's where enclave wants to expand.
Keep moving to the,
This,
yeah.
that's the,
Oh, no, not that. I'm sorry. Hold on. Where the white pointer is.
so
Okay?
this-
Mm-hmm.
okay, so
That's
What is that section
Up.
that was added in?
the
Part of
ski,
the ski back.
the ski back, if you follow my red line, goes like this.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the connection from Assay Hill
Back to the
to
lifts.
Fanny Hill. That's the ski bridge right there.
Mm-hmm.
And underneath the ski bridge is the ski back trail and the road.
And where they have the pointer is the lift.
yeah,
Yeah,
this is
that's the
Elk Camp
gondola.
Gondola.
Base of the gun.
Okay, so if you move that white pointer down towards Wood Road,
Mhm.
Now
okay,
you're gonna ski back.
you don't go on the other side of Wood Road.
Yeah, you do.
I
You go
never
right-
have, but you can.
You go right underneath the bridge right here, and you go all the way to Essay Hill,
Yep.
Say ski back to the Viceroy.
Mm-hmm.
and the timbers.
And now you
Okay.
can see why I omitted it from the map, because I was like, really? You can ski down
Okay.
there?
Knew you'd never skied it before, so it didn't matter.
I never just skied it.
That's his
before.
favorite, right?
You never skied that?
No, never skied that.
Well, we're gonna give you,
When I lived at the Enclave, I always came in through Funnel.
we're gonna give you a tour of the mountain.
I do think, the skier traffic will increase with Limelight guests here and everything, but
Yeah, probably true.
they will ski down to
Okay.
Assay
Yep.
Hill and come on up.
Okay.
Not a chance.
No?
No way.
They'll walk out to the gondola.
They'll walk out to the six-pack or the
That's true.
gondola.
They take that, slow boat to China or lift.
True.
That's what that was.
Bucket or six, depending on if you're going east or west.
So you could have part of the new buildings.
I'd like to go back to Alyssa's question, over there where, let's see, 10 and 11.
Uh-huh.
That's
Right
all,
there, where that
I
point
have notes on that's all part of potentially Phase 3.
Right?
And not knowing what will be happening there yet with those buildings.
You've already, they came through the sketch plan and through the preliminary PUD.
And sketch,
They're entitled,
Yeah,
but
they're,
the design work is not
the
final.
design work hasn't been fun.
There's about,
Right.
don't quote me on this, but there's like 4,000 square feet of commercial in 10A and B.
that's about right.
There really isn't any, it's all residential in 11.
But that commercial is all first.
The
Floor.
commercial was in the conceptual designs that were approved is along this area,
Right.
really down in this corner here with the.
But I guess my question was, because of, you still have to come forward with the design, that the second floors, as we were trying to limit where the retail shops that, the marijuana shops potentially could be, which Phase 3 are going to be residential anyway, so that's really not really, what, my point is, it's not
A
really a
moot
good
point.
green spot,
It's a moot point, really.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, pretty much the whole base village,
Right.
if you look at that, is out of
Is
the
out.
picture.
Right.
And under the current ownership, they're out.
Anyway.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
See,
I personally don't think it's necessary to have a 300-foot buffer out of the center of the plaza. And
why?
because I feel that you buffer the plaza, you buffer the entrances to the plaza, and we've more or less said, not on first floor, so you're not gonna walk past it, right?
Well, we've only
So-
said not
so
on the
then
first
why
floor.
Why do you need to take the extra 200 feet?
Depends on if you're, let's use building 6. You've got a lower level and a.
Building 6 is covered by 100 feet. Because we talked about that.
Well,
It's one of the options that are in there. We tried to show all those different
Yeah.
distances, but
Building 6 is covered, and I totally agree that Building 6 has to be covered.
Yeah, but what about all the exterior? I mean, all those fountains and all the whole plaza. I mean, the whole thing is kid-centered.
It's all covered. Because
100
all
feet?
the entrances into the plaza were covered at 100 feet.
Can you pull up the 100 feet?
But to be clear, the only ground level that we have in the restrictions so far is on the mall.
Well, that's
Right.
true. But I hear how our colleagues are speaking.
There's your 100 feet.
That's from the plaza. I
So
don't have
you-
anything.
That whole walkway between 7 and 8 in that whole area. I
Yeah.
mean, you could
Maybe,
potentially.
I'm sorry, maybe it's 200 feet.
Well,
It-
right now, you could get out the transit facility.
Well,
and
there's the 200-foot.
Yeah, but
Right,
my
but you-
point is,
It covers Building 6. It covers the entrance and the fountains.
Yeah, but you could put it in that, isn't that building 8, isn't there commercial right on that walkway?
yes.
Seven,
But aren't we talking
He's
about,
got the-
eight's got the
you, Amy,
little-
you
the
guys,
little boutique.
Alyssa, I think that you are saying that you don't want any development, any dispensary on the first floor.
Correct.
So then don't argue about what would be on the first floor.
No, but that was only in the mall.
But you don't feel the same way about this?
I don't think you can put it on the second floor in those buildings anyways.
Well, that's
There's
not,
no space.
that's not necessarily
I
our,
would say no to
problem.
any first floor in Base Village, to answer your question.
you would say so, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So,
The other thing I would say, it appears to me that when you get out of the transit facility, can you show the transit? Which is, keep on going.
It's right
Right there. You could technically get out of the transit facility and the building that's, the Capitol Peak, Hayden Lodge area, like where Clark's is right now. That's basically what you might be talking about.
it's first floor.
And
Well, it depends on which way you. Yeah, you're right.
It's plaza level.
It's plaza level, yeah.
Right.
But we've never spoken about
No,
plaza
we
level
haven't.
base village.
No.
We haven't. We haven't.
We are now.
I guess what I'm trying to do, Bill, understanding the concerns of our colleagues, I'm trying to open up space in the base village with potential at some point in time, or maybe never, where a dispensary could be housed.
Let me suggest something different. You're working on regulatory language. We've consistently heard the message, you can change the regulations over time. So why don't we try to keep it simple? We've talked about the mall, and we've talked about the center. And then with next councils, they can look at this again. And for right now, make it all first floor in Base Village. Restrict.
Travis,
Because we know the existing owners.
can I just have Travis point
But I
out?
go, so the existing owners have said no to Base Village. So if they soften that, then you could. But go ahead, Tom.
I just wanted to point out where the Clark's Market Annex is, that's all,
Yeah, it's over there on that.
okay.
And I mean,
But that's a lower level, if Clark's Market wasn't there, that being a lower level is going to be, it could be a potential shop.
Well, the lower level, if you come in on the other way, it's on first level.
If you come in now other way, it's
That's
on
where I
first
park
level.
to go to Clark's.
Right.
and it's right across from the fountains and the whole kit. I mean, I just was
So
down there
my point
yesterday.
is, it's green at the moment, even though it's on, we're talking about lower level and second level and everything else.
Yeah, because that's only the 200 feet.
Correct. with
I mean, go to
300.
300 feet. There you go.
We go to 200 feet and we're just taking everything out of the equation. You know, we've talked about trying to find a spot, the realistic point of finding a spot, but you know.
Why are you so centered on Base Village? You've got it up.
I'm
on
not necessarily centered on Base Village at all. I'm just looking at the map that's what in front of me, that's all.
So 300 feet.
From what I've read in the paper, from a landlord point of view, that they weren't gonna allow it anyway. So it's all about the landlords anyway,
That's
because
what
it's
we-
private property. It's not our decision.
Right, but I don't think we can base our decisions on what we think a given landlord may do. I think we have to go with what we feel is the right thing to do for our town and not take into account who owns what right now, because it could change in
I
the drop
totally
of a
understand
dime.
that, Alyssa.
So I would go with
That point,
300.
I'm not making my decision on anything to answer your question, but
So then
I'm just trying to figure out where a potential retail dispensary may be.
So if you went with the 300 feet, future councils can lift restrictions or change restrictions.
Well, I might be willing to go to 300 feet without a first floor restriction in Base Village, because there is basically nothing left.
Right.
Well,
So if you, so that might, might be a compromise that I'm willing to go to. And the same thing being said, Marky, coming back to you, okay? Marky, the same thing being said. If there's a development in 10AB and 11, and a future council doesn't want, first floor dispensary, they'll change it.
this is the, can I just,
Yeah, go ahead.
this is the problem that I have, because I was just down there on Sunday, that in Building 6, where the cursor is right now, okay, all of the kid-centered stuff, most of it, in that building is entered on the lower level. And you come in, and there's the game room, and there's the Ice Age Center. So you put a first floor pot shop right across from that entrance. That, to me, is a no-go.
Well, wait a minute, no, you can't have it there at 300 feet. There's nothing you can put right across from that entrance.
No, you said 200 feet.
No,
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 we're back to 300.
I'm suggesting as a compromise, Alyssa, a 300-foot buffer, but without a restriction on the first floor.
So that's the first floor of the walkway where 10 is. Is that what you're saying?
If 10 ever shows up. And as Marky says, a future council could change it and eliminate the first floor at that point.
I would say, why don't we just make a first floor and 300 feet in Base Village now? They can lift it later.
No, Marky, I'm not willing to do that.
Okay,
I'm willing to compromise, I'm willing to compromise, as I said, 300 feet with no first floor.
I won't go there. There's too many kids.
Okay.
Or just make sure or you're saying 200 feet and first floor restrictions. Is that?
Yes, I would do
Can you
200
go back
feet
to
and
the
first
200?
floor restriction.
Yeah, but see, then the 200, you're left with right across from Building 6,
Right.
all of those potentials for shops right there.
And just so I understand your suggestion, the first floor restriction is along that main walking path. So from that, where the Viceroy shuttle kind of goes from the Viceroy up to
Yep.
the six-pack, all that would be, everything on that walking path would be restricted in
Right.
addition.
To first floor restriction.
And so second floor, something up there might be available with this idea, but it would function similar to what we're suggesting for the mall.
So what's the difference then, Bob, between 300 and none on first floor? There really isn't.
Well, it opens up the second floor.
It opens the second floor.
It opens up Capitol Peak, it
Well,
opens up 7 and 8.
Marky, the difference is with a 200 setback, with a 200 buffer and second floor available, there are
This is Capitol Peak
there are
C,
places
this
in
is
there
A, and this is
that,
A,
that could potentially
It's up
house a dispensary. With 300 and a setback and a restriction, there's no place. And if just as you say, a future council can make a change to go from 300 to 200, I'm saying to you, a future council can make a change to go from no restriction on the first floor to restriction.
Well, here's the problem.
And not only that, but I'm talking about buildings that haven't been built, may never be built.
Well, okay, here's the argument. If you wind up with the shop and what you're proposing, you're not going to be able to get rid of that shop if the council changes the restrictions. You can't close a business if you change the restrictions.
Well, first of all, current ownership isn't gonna do anything, because they've already told us, right?
Yeah, but you can't base on that.
So why are you so against a 300-foot buffer with no restriction on the first floor?
I would put a 300 buffer, no first floor, and if the future councils are interested,
Marky,
Okay.
you're
I'm
not
sorry.
being,
you're not being logical.
no, I'm sorry, I am. I am. Those buildings aren't there. So you just said to me, with a 200 setback, if a dispensary goes into one of those buildings up there, you can't get them out. Fine. So I'll go with a 300 setback, but allow for first floor. There's no place currently for anybody to even put a dispensary in there, because there is no second floor available, and there won't be until another building gets built.
I understand what you're saying. I feel like it's, in my mind, it's kind of one of those things that's like, you don't want to forget to put the restriction in if you want it. And so it's like, if the restriction's there, the building gets built, and then they say, can we revisit putting a pot shop in, then you change the restriction. That's the only reason I agree with her. I just feel like it's easier to put it in and take it out than to forget to put it in if you really decide you don't want it there. That's kind of the way I look at it.
That's
But
good too.
in my mind, I think it's much better. I mean, if I had to choose between your two evils, I would choose the 300 and let it on the first floor, but I'd prefer the other way around. I prefer just to restrict it for that reason. Not saying it could never be lifted or you could never allow it, but I don't know, it's like, let that decision be made when that building is ever built. I don't know.
I would put 300 on when the building gets built. I'd rather be more restrictive than less restrictive right now.
It's really fun.
Well,
Well,
let's see, what, you know, for
And we're
the sake
talking
of,
about something
for the
that's
sake of
not
trying to
part
move
of
this forward, what, if anything, can we agree on?
I'd like to go back up to the mall,
Well,
because
let's get through one at a time so we don't have to come back to this. Can we agree on this and then move on?
this is probably the most contentious.
But this is the one, there's no option here right now. I understand we're talking about the future, but the current ownership, yes, it could change. I don't see it changing. So I think we should make a decision here and move on.
So are you comfortable with a 300 feet and no first floor?
I mean, 300 feet, there's really nothing available. So, but I think it's really irrelevant. I don't think anything's gonna happen in Base Village anyway.
No, so I'd go 300 feet, put it
So
in.
300 feet and allow first floors would be my vote.
Tommy, where are you?
I think somebody needs to put an X down and say that we want it here, because this is, you know, where I'm at is, I still feel that the town, the community wants the dispensaries, and we need the tax money. And I know it's not all about the money, but we're talking about something right now, we're putting all these restrictions on. There's no room for anything. There's no room for anything.
There's plenty of
Yeah,
room. You have the
there's plenty.
Snowmass Center, you have the
Snowmass
lots
Mall.
of places in the mall. I mean,
Well, I'm referring to the map right in front of me I'm talking about.
Base Village.
I'm trying to go with what Bill just said. Let's talk about what's in front of us. So I'm not talking about another area in the community, I'm just talking about what's in front of me. So, and if there's a compromise being 300 feet and allowing the first floors, there's still not a lot of places available. Because the buildings we're talking about on first floors haven't even been built yet, haven't even been designed yet, haven't even come in front of us yet. And then we have the ski path, the ski trail to deal with, and when that ski trail becomes active, I know you have it in red right now, Travis, but there's that little access road right now, which is the backstage for phase 2 going on right now. Is that gonna be part of the Wood Road? is that gonna get widened in red then?
Oh, the walkway over to,
Well, I mean, where the Viceroy is,
yeah,
okay? Which is right there.
yep.
So then, right now, they're using that as a backstage road for Phase 2. Bring your cursor up a little bit to the left.
They mean that little.
Right there, yeah, right there.
That's
So-
that's the fire road.
Well,
It's the fire route, it's
That's the
not
fire
gonna
access.
change.
I kn-
It's also where the luge goes.
Right. So, I don't see it happening in Base Village, period, you know, between the restrictions. And if, you know, if we had a compromise some way or another, I know the pushback we're gonna get from first floor accommodations aren't gonna really work in Base Village, because it's gonna be in somebody's way if it's allowed on the first floor, so maybe we should just eliminate the Base Village, period,
There you go.
okay?
Sounds like a great
Okay,
idea.
because it doesn't seem like there's gonna be any room.
Well, you set the regulation up it that way, and you're restricted. And then if Base Village ownership changes, the mores up there change, whatever, they can come in and ask for a zoning
Right.
change.
Right.
But I
But
don't wanna sit.
to try and cut this up into these circles and triangles.
It's crazy. It's
and-
almost like,
and then- well,
put an X on it and try to drop it there.
The problem is you all are arguing about first floor and second floor, but these are all as the crow flies. They don't take into. So that 300 buffer, you could go up to the 5th floor of this building right here, which will be building 8.
Right.
The 300 foot still goes because it's as the crow flies. So, I mean, you're talking about a lot of stuff that doesn't even apply.
Right.
The ownership doesn't want it. The ownership shouldn't be the reason you change, but what are you really gonna do here? And if they wanna change it later and the market bears it out, they can come ask.
Right.
I think it's a compromise. Mark, to answer your question is, I'm up for just eliminating Base Village and you, I think you need to compromise a little bit wherever the other restrictions may be, not just you and Alyssa or anybody else, colleague-wise, when it comes to where we want to really allow this, possibly the center, or, I mean, don't have a whole lot of room left in the mall either, up in West Village.
Let's, okay, so are you fine? There was like a 3-2 on this one. for Base
On
Village.
what? I don't even know what the thing is. I mean,
Wait,
Tom
to
said
not
to
allow
eliminate. You
Base
said
Village.
300 and no first floor. Bob said 300 and first floor. You said 300 and first floor.
I'm fine with no Base Village.
And then I am too.
Okay. Now that we've got that
How
one.
do you
so-
feel about, Bob, about
okay.
Base Village?
You guys, you know, look, it's,
Well, I'm just kind of curious how you feel about the Base Village, because look at the little green triangles here.
I know
You
know
know?
exactly what you're saying, Tom.
Yeah.
You know exactly what you're,
So we're gonna go up to the mall area now?
Yes.
yeah, let's go up to
So
the
the
mall.
decision is we're eliminating Base
Base
No,
Village.
we
It
haven't,
made us a little, yeah.
Yes, we
Three of
just
us
did.
voted
Well,
for it.
Okay.
Too, we're eliminating,
all right, fine.
Okay, let's
I-
go up
I
to
haven't-
Challenge Aspen.
let's
I
go to the mall.
didn't know we eliminated it
Well, there
totally.
I got a
Three
chart
yes.
going.
Okay, okay.
I'm gonna graph it out later and send it to all of you.
Okay, let's go to Challenge,
Village.
let's go, well, we're up at West Village. So where is the possible places right now, Travis, according to this map?
Bowling alley.
Everything that's green.
No, not the center of the mall.
except
first floor.
It's not the first
main
floor of the
level.
mall, which is the main pedestrian walkway, but everything on the second floor or sub-level. So I don't know how many places have sub-level spaces other than the bowling alley.
So you're talking about the bowling alley and the area that's right above the transit center,
Yes,
right?
like
Yeah.
where we used to meet as ambassadors in that locker room.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if you consider, Albert Lane part of the mall, but
Yeah, that's like where the
some
transit office
spaces here,
is.
Right.
correct?
Just over
Transit and
here.
parking's right here.
Yep.
That area, above the Ice Age Discovery, right?
Yes,
Yes.
right there, up this, off the stairs.
It's right here.
Right there.
El
By El
Poggio's,
Poggio.
El Poggio's above the Ice Age Discovery.
No, But there's something else there. There's some sort of little office.
There's a little office right there, but kind of between.
In
those,
between
yeah.
the two.
Yeah.
Where's
Mid-level.
Gene Taylor? Because there used to be,
It's in the red.
They're back here.
and I'm talking about the offices that used to be, oh my gosh, they've been
That's
empty
what I
for
was
a
just talking about.
the offices of Snowmass, or there's a whole office level up there.
Just to the right of where that hand is.
It's right in here.
It's upstairs in the Discovery Centers, I think what
This
you're
is
talking
a
about.
yoga
Yeah.
studio. It was Meridian Pacific. It was Snowmass Ranch Realty.
Where's the Discovery going in?
Right
That
above
little
the chocolate
triangle.
factory. Right.
in
So that, where the stair, Bill, you got your pointer out.
Yeah,
It's
that's
kind of a green tree where, I see, is that El Poggio?
here. This is El Poggio right here.
Okay. And on the second floor, it's now it's labeled, if you park in the mall parking, Romero Group on that second floor?
They're back closer to Challenge Aspen. They're up there
They're right in
Yeah,
here.
that's, okay.
somewhere in there.
But it's a very long that whole
The
floor.
long narrow office that enters at the end right
They're
here
down
across
here.
from.
I think they're where Travis's hand is. I know they've got an office where Travis's hand is. They might have a couple up
Well,
there.
that's, their
Okay.
maintenance office is there, but their main office is further to the left. Basically, that green area is where the ski company offices, Romero, Big Hoss, my office is on the backside.
Here.
So,
That 100-foot distance for Challenge Aspen, we were trying to keep it up that primary deck in front of, that was kind of how that number got there.
so this is El Poggio.
Mm-hmm.
So then we go over to Mountain Dragon, or,
That's the Dragon's Deck,
yeah, okay,
and it stretches down.
okay, and on the front
You
side,
should call that slow grooving.
slow growing, yeah, well,
Or a refectory.
We could call it the refectory, couldn't we?
but there's all kinds of second floor space up here.
Yes.
Yeah, the Photoshop's up there.
Photoshop's up there, there's a ski place.
Christie Sports has some
Mhm.
space up there too,
There's a sunset.
That's
ski
what I'm
repair,
thinking,
right,
yeah, yeah.
Sunset ski repair.
so.
That, to me, looks like a real probable space. And over here,
Big Hoss.
Big Hoss. And that's where Bill's office is, over in here?
I'm on the backside, but that's
So, Marky,
Romero's office.
where's which dot are you, the first?
That's me right
That's you.
there.
Okay, so take your dot down to right there. So that's that walkway above the transit center, correct?
Yeah, that's where Ski
So do we
Co,
consider that second floor, or
Yes.
we consider that first floor?
that's second
It's
floor.
third
That would be
floor, really.
Yeah, it's really third
The
floor.
only thing that's being restricted in the mall that's not in color is the primary walkway.
Which is this.
Which is that one?
So this along here, there's a ski shop on the back.
Isn't that part of Fort
No.
Mountain?
No, that's my
There's no
office.
ski shop anymore.
There's Gorsuch, the backside of Gorsuch, and Fort Mountain Sports has got a back door in
What
there,
happened to
too.
Breeze?
It's been gone for years.
Yeah.
Oh, well, see, you see,
You've been.
I never frequented, I
Maybe
didn't
you
like
need to
that
take a
shop.
ride with Bob and do the ski trail.
That's where I think it was this year, the AVSC used that space for something.
Okay. So there are spaces up on the mall.
Yeah.
Okay. That whole area where the red dot is, though, is the location that Romero's been showing for marijuana shops.
Because it's several stories. From Challenge Aspen to the bottom of this building here is several stories. Because the elevator starts right here, takes you up to the top, that's 4 floors.
So that's where Check is, right?
Check's right down
Checks
here.
down low.
There's a tiny little office right there. And this is the elevator.
So it could go where the doctor's office is.
Yes.
That's weird.
Hopefully the doctor will be prescribing it.
Ay.
Doesn't have to anymore.
except he has to have the license, and it's a pain in the butt for the doctors to get it.
So my recommendation would be to eliminate the red around Challenge Aspen. They're about 10 steps away from a bar. I think that we have to look at marijuana and alcohol in the same vein. And I think this is a potential for a shop. And I don't see a conflict with Challenge Aspen.
Even though they've written a letter asking us not to put anything up there?
Well, they moved in next to a bar.
This is the entrance to Zane's right here.
But it's also a restaurant.
Yeah, there's a restaurant
That
right there.
whole area, right where his marking it, people sit out there and smoke and drink all the time. That's right outside Challenge Aspen's front door.
No, I know where you're talking about. I just, I don't know. I feel like there's plenty of other space. Like, I don't know why it has to be there, and, you know, it's Romero's fault that he's showing it as the spot when it hasn't even been regulated, so.
No, it's vacant. There's
Yeah.
vacancy up there. There's a lot of
I
vacancy.
get it.
Put the circle back up, will you, Travis? The problem is that because when you're doing it as the crow flies, you're taking out all these discrete lower level places because of what occurs up here on the top floor. Okay, so there's a bunch of little shops in this building, not so much in this building, but underneath this too.
So what is there, John? Can you,
The sunglass places like right here.
okay,
Sidewinders here. This is this is on mall level, not the top
yeah,
level.
I'm thinking.
Top level of this building is all Zane's. Underneath it is Surefoot. Underneath
okay.
this is Incline.
Yeah,
Those are all main level of the mall.
That's what
those
I'm
are
saying.
main
But
floor,
the point,
okay.
yeah, and so I guess if you're saying, when you say the main pedestrian level, do you mean this path, or are you including all these paths too?
Those two,
The way I was interpreting it was like where Gene Taylor's is, where Surefoot is, where
Right.
Incline is.
Okay, so all the way down here to Fuel,
Yeah,
Right.
that was my interpretation, that
Right.
the
main
liquor
walk.
store, and all these,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, that's how I was interpreting
my
that main
question
walk.
was,
If you're
what's on the
walking from the
second
parking
floor?
lot across the mall to the
The steak
Skittles.
place,
Okay,
the steak
Steak
house.
Place, the Mammoth Steakhouse.
Which hasn't been open, the Hideout, which hasn't been open, the Yoga Studio, which is not open, the Romero's Maintenance Group,
Hideaway.
yeah.
This top floor of this building used to be a deli, and now it's office. Anyway,
And I guess,
you're taking out a big chunk of potential retail with this circle.
we don't have to make this a buffer like the other ones either. I mean, this was just to kind of start the conversation.
It could be.
Could you limit it to a where's Challenge Aspen on this map, front door?
Right where my hand is,
Okay,
Well,
it's their front door.
they got a door here
And
too.
that's the back, that's the equipment door.
True.
Yeah, we
Yeah, where the hand is the front door.
okay. And Zane's is over there.
Zane's.
So where is everyone on the 100 feet?
Well,
I want to know what's this? I'm thinking about perhaps we can do,
That's
This is,
the old yoga studio.
It's one of the spaces they're showing.
who's showing it?
Romero,
Why is he showing it when we haven't even got this?
he's just showing it as an available space.
it's vacant.
Oh. Okay.
so I'm kind of in the boat with Bill in regards to, I still, just because we have received a letter from Challenge Aspen, I'm not just throwing it away, but in the same token, there's a lot of people who don't want the retail to happen. And I'm not in a total agreement that we need to have this big buffer for Challenge Aspen. I think some of the potential spaces, it's just like Bill said too, I mean, they put Challenge Aspen. And first of all, Challenge Aspen doesn't own the space, they're renting. So maybe they may not be there that long.
Then you change it.
Okay, so we talked about whether or not, if we're gonna go with an ownership situation and the ownership changes again, anyway,
So you got Bill
I'm
and
in the boat of
Tom.
not having that big buffer for Challenge
So
Aspen.
all you need is a third.
All you need is a third.
All right, well, I'm doing something, so I'm working on it, and I'll have a comment shortly.
Okay, we'll wait.
He's putting it down with a pencil.
So what?
He's doing the math here.
I think you got a lot of space up there in that mall. That's potential. Like where Skiko's offices are, that could be a place. I would think they'd want to move to Base Village.
Where?
I don't know, but
How's those calculations working out?
I'm not going there.
Measuring feet,
Yeah, measuring
feet to
feet.
yards.
I'm gonna call time at 7 o'clock, guys, because we've
Yeah,
got
All right,
another.
I know,
okay.
it's time to move on.
So, I mean, I'm sympathetic to Challenge Aspen, but I really, I don't know, I just can't, it takes out so much of an area which is prime for dispensaries that I just don't know that I can, you know, go with 100. So at this point, I would say that I would be of the same mind as Tom and Bill.
Okay, moving on, let's go to the next area.
Do we have agreement on 300 feet from childcare facilities, or
Yes.
do we want to revisit that?
No, I'm fine.
300 feet? Okay, so
Does everyone agree on that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
probably the Skittles
You've got a lot
gondola.
of space up on that mall, tons of space. So let's go back up to the mall for 1 second.
Okay.
So what's the distance? We're talking about 300 from one
Walking
store to
distance
another?
from threshold to threshold of any two stores.
So you could technically have two stores.
Hypothetically, yeah.
You could have like 4 stores. That's why you gotta limit it.
Yeah, I don't know, let's,
No, didn't we say the mall is 647 feet?
Yep.
But you gotta go up
40.
and down.
Huh?
I mean, if the way it's proposed is it's
Well,
walking
what's the
distance.
linear footage?
He's doing it right there.
well, let's go from there to the end of pavement to the Skittles would be 625 feet.
So do 300.
Well,
Do 300 from there.
but Travis, go from there to where the buffer is for the Skittles.
So like here?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's where,
True.
because I don't think we have,
It's 511.
I don't think we have disagreement on the Skittles buffer, do we?
No, there's none. So you technically could almost have 2 stores.
I would think 2 would be feasible, 3 would be,
No.
stars would have to align, I think, to get 3
You know,
stars.
we've got to talk about the number at some point.
I think that's appropriate, yeah. But
Okay, so
500 feet
are we fine
roughly.
with the 300? Let's get through the buffer on this one tonight.
What about the ski back buffer?
I totally agree with the
So-
ski back
So
buffer.
childcare facilities is definitely 300 feet.
Yeah.
Ski back buffer, we added
Skittles is definitely a go.
based on previous conversations about, you know, skier traffic seeing and being able to ski in, ski out of pot shops. So we have agreement there?
Everybody?
Yes.
Yeah.
Bill?
Okay. Sure. Then we also added the 200-foot buffer from the center line of the Skittles gondola, which hopefully you can see is this black line from Base Village up to the mall, of course. 200 feet. We had a lot of conversations about maybe extending the line out to this trail, but we felt that 200 feet really addressed kind of those slope side potential locations or anything that was visible from where those courses are for children.
There was a person who talked to me about this alignment, and a person that is interested in recreational shop here within Snowmass. And one of the comments that that person made was they don't want to be able to see signage for a pot shop when you're on the main lifts. So, and that was just one person. So if I look at this buffer, would there be any location in any of these places where you might potentially have a shop?
Don't believe so. And in addition,
I thought there was space in the Stonebridge.
Stonebridge would be one.
but can you see that from the
Can't see that from a chair.
six-pack?
No, I don't,
No, you
I
can't.
don't think so. And you can't see the bowling alley sign it, well, maybe
No,
you
I mean,
can.
there were some concerns about this space below Vinga Vinga, since that is highly visible from Fanny Hill, and
Right.
that is now out of the question.
Yeah.
I'd also just remind everyone that we did further restrict the maximum allowable sign, so it's,
Right.
So you have to have pretty good eyesight to see it from the lift anyway.
Okay, I'm fine with that zone.
So
What you
that's
do-
the Skittles buffer, 200 feet.
Yeah.
200
Okay.
feet. Do we have,
Is everyone?
Everybody fine? Everybody's fine?
great.
Then Brush Creek buffer is the next one.
Right, which we actually haven't discussed before, but in conversations of kind of adding the slope side buffer and everyone's desires to keep retail marijuana stores discreet, we kind of started realizing that this is our main thoroughfare in town.
Mm-hmm.
Would stores along Brush Creek Road be appropriate and or discreet? So we kind of threw this on the map for your consideration. We didn't,
So, one is the bank, right? Alpine Bank,
In the Conoco.
and one would be the existing Conoco.
correct, there's,
And, you know, and you're in the real estate office,
Right.
you know, all of those in there.
That would make sense.
yeah, those would be eliminated with this buffer. Of course, the Snowmass Center, however, would still be an option for,
So Snowmass Center would be wide open then, for a second floor,
Correct.
but not on street level.
Well, we don't, that restriction's not on this,
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, discreet, it couldn't be on the main street, main thoroughfare if you want discreet.
well,
Could be on the
discrete.
backside.
Yeah, okay.
Well, wait, that's not one of the restrictions we've got now. Basically,
Right.
it's allowed.
It's
It
open.
could be next to Clark's, the way that's written up now. There's no restriction for the Snowmass Center.
How's that discreet?
Well, the signage is that's, right now, there'd be limited signage. We have those restrictions, but if you want it beyond that, I guess that's why I'm bringing it up. We've said nothing on the main pedestrian path to the mall. We've taken out all of Base Village, but this one, there's a 300-foot distances between any two shops, but that's,
there's also regulations that, no product can be visible from storefronts.
those types of restrictions.
Everything has to be
But I
screened.
consider that like the first level of the mall. I mean, I don't know.
Well, and again, that's the stuff that you guys gotta give direction on, but that restriction is not in there right now.
But I mean, if it were up to me, I would say second floor or backside, like where the hardware store
Right.
is or whatever.
Yeah,
I just think
I'm
it's
fine with
weird
that.
if you have it like smack dab between the post office and the grocery store. I mean, that's weird. I would not be thrilled if I was coming in there with my kids, which I do like every day.
Yeah,
That's
so
where
you
I
gotta
am.
make that pitch to your right.
Well,
not this
I'm
direction.
making the pitch to everyone in this room.
I agree with what you're saying, but I'm fine with the backside.
I think, honestly, I think I agree with that for the most part. I wanna make a suggestion, though, of an alternative to a buffer, or a 200-foot buffer from Brush Creek Road. And I wanna suggest that the same result could be had if we restrict entrances to any of those buildings to, to not be an entrance from Brush Creek Road, and restrict the signage along there so that there's no signage that's visible from Brush Creek Road. So the signage has to be more or less in the parking, directed towards the parking lot. And the entrances are not facing Brush Creek Road. And doesn't that achieve the same purpose without eliminating a whole bunch of buildings?
So you're talking about the gas station?
No, I'm talking about all those buildings.
No, but I'm saying
mean,
if you're
today it's
talking about the gas station,
Today it's a bank. It doesn't mean it's a bank tomorrow.
no, I'm saying, can you be more specific when you're talking about the gas station? Like, if you're.
I'm not specifically talking about the gas station.
No, I know. I'm asking if you can describe what that is like. I'm a visual person. So like,
Think of the basement of the bank. There's commercial tenants underneath there with tiny little signs. Now, I'm not suggesting for a second that the bank's gonna be leasing to them, but I think what Bob's saying is that the signs, if you just imagine the accountant, the property management, and the architect that have those places underneath, they have signs that would definitely comply with the two-foot square, and they don't face Brush Creek Road. Okay, so that's I would, and they don't enter off Brush Creek Road, which is what Bob, I think that's one of the things he said. Then I think in this case, I don't know how you don't have, the only entrance I see that's not visible is back here, and that's
Right.
not really. So it would probably eliminate that. Just so you understand, this building is also owned by the bank. Okay? Then if you get in here, I think what he's talking about is an entrance that's back here with no signage out on the main thoroughfare.
And then where would people park?
Here? You mean to access this? The gas station site?
Yeah.
Oh, there's parking all along this side, and there's parking all along this side. That would be a business decision for the landowner here.
so the restriction says what?
Visibility.
Cannot be visible?
Can't be faced, cannot have any kind of,
Can't have the green cross in the front of the gas station. that,
or on
you
the
know,
top
there's
of the gas station.
Right, but the one for the gas station is accessible from Brush Creek Road. It's not visible, but it's accessible.
Well, Bob made that point, and I'm trying to explain.
You asked the
where-
question, how it would set up.
Right,
So-
but are you saying accessible and visible, or just visible?
I said the entrance is not accessible from Brush Creek, and the signage is not visible from Brush Creek.
So then that eliminates the
That's
gas
it.
station.
It eliminates gas
Why?
station, because it's
Because
accessible.
it's accessible from Brush Creek. That's how you enter.
The entrance is, no, the entrance is not what I mean is, the entrance is not, I guess I understand what you're asking me.
Yeah, right.
The entrance is not visible from Brush Creek.
So
So you can't walk,
entrance and signage cannot be visible from Brush Creek
Right.
Road, is what you're
Yes.
saying.
yes.
As opposed to the border that they're presenting?
Yeah.
The yellow buffer.
So who owns the gas
Ooh.
station now?
Sorry.
What's the ownership?
The property or the business?
Both.
The property,
Mr. Dresser will answer that question.
the property is owned by an LLC with different members, and there's a leasehold interest on the business.
So there's a lot of questions about what's going on with the Conoco, short-term, long-term. So if there was different ownership for the Conoco, like the gas station moves, so if you had a back, so what you're talking about is a back entrance.
Oh, actually, I'm talking about an entrance that is in a different place than where we currently are used to seeing the entrance.
No, and you guys are all relating this to what's here, and what he's saying is that any entrance cannot be visible from this side,
Okay.
but it's okay if it's visible from this side.
Mhm.
He doesn't want an entrance that's visible from the Brush Creek side. And,
Or
you know,
I mean-
just think the bank decides to do something else and sell out and just locate in their own, they have another location up on the mall. And they decide to sell this whole piece of property, and this piece of property gets sold. What he's saying is the restriction is you can't have any frontage of a store on Brush Creek Road. But on this side that faces is okay.
I mean, I personally think Bob's proposal is better than allowing it in the Snowmass Center. I mean, I know that's not what you were saying, but I'm just saying, like, to me, the Snowmass Center, I mean, the upstairs is kind of weird, and I know there's a whole redevelopment thing potentially going on there, but not taking that into consideration right now, it seems, I don't know, like, I just feel like that center is such a hub for,
Well,
it's just weird
understand
to
that
me.
you're gonna be restricting it as is. And there's a PUD coming through that you can restrict through the PUD.
Okay. Okay.
So Bob, you would prefer to have that language as opposed to the buffer?
Yeah, yeah. I would-
Because it would allow something at the gas station?
No, because it would open up all of those buildings, potentially, some point in the future. It could open up all of those buildings. And, you know, we kind of are talking about not having a first floor space in the Snowmass Center. And I guess I just want there to be some options.
So, as stated earlier, I would prefer more restrictions than less when we first get started. I like the buffer zone. I think the Snowmass Center is ripe for consideration. And I'm not in favor of the main level, but when it comes in through the PUD is when we could do the restrictions on the center. Because I don't know what the final PUD is gonna be.
Well, you have a sketch plan.
Yeah, sketch plan tells me something, but not a lot.
Exactly.
So I believe a majority wanted to add the restriction of no first level stores at the Snowmass Center. Is that correct?
Second level and backside.
Yeah,
Who's in favor
it.
of that?
I am.
I'm fine with that.
Markey, Tom,
I'm not. I think we have to be
Melissa?
really careful of making this a back alley industry. I mean, I think if we're very upfront about it, it opens up the conversation. I'm just very hesitant about trying to push it to the back.
well, I think it could be very different once it gets redeveloped, but I think for right now, like, I just can't imagine it on that first level of the Snowmass Center.
Alyssa, how do you visualize it being very different when it's being redeveloped?
I don't know, because I can't be part of that discussion, so I had to recuse myself.
You haven't
So-
even seen the sketch
So
plan.
I haven't even looked at it, if I'm being honest. I've completely stayed out of it, so I can't really answer that question. I don't even know what the plans are. But in my mind, I feel like having it in those other buildings is more appealable, just because I feel like there are businesses in there. It's not as weird as, I mean, I think the top floor of the Snowmass Center, not where the hardware store is, because you can access it in different ways, but the rest of those office spaces are just weird. I mean, it's just like a weird place.
Well, that's getting redeveloped.
Right, but, which I can't comment on.
We don't know.
Maybe.
So do your restrictions at the time that the PUD comes through.
Well, the restriction is from the main floor of the center. The majority seems to be there. So the question is, do we want to do something with a Buck Creek buffer?
I
Brush
like
Creek
the
buffer.
Brush Creek buffer, personally.
I'm not really in favor of the Brush Creek buffer because it kind of eliminates some of the potential shops that could be there.
But
Where-
would you be
No,
supportive?
don't get me wrong, I'm not
Talking
saying
about
shops as in multiple
talking
dispensaries.
accessibility.
I'm talking about potentially a retail space being in one of those buildings. And I like Bob's idea of not being visible from Brush Creek Road. I'm not referring to the gas station, I'm just referring to potential something under the bank, whatever, but I think we do have to make, not tonight, but make it in our conversation, how many shops we think we really want, because I am in agreement with limiting the amount of shops available.
Okay, we have, you're fine with the accessibility, you want to,
Accessibility.
so what you'd like to do is not have the buffer,
I would like not to have the buffer,
and the
Have
whole
the
issue.
visual
and have the
Yes.
visual
restriction.
restrictions, yes.
Okay, where are you?
In that zone, in that buffer, it would be, it's not so much you can't be there, but in that buffer, it would be the restrictions would only allow the front door and signage such that they cannot be seen from Brush Creek.
Okay.
In that area
Oh,
that
I
we,
see, so you, in other words, you
You want
you
to,
That two-
maintain the buffer, but you put in the restriction only as it relates to
what your suggestion was.
visibility.
Correct.
I'm good with that.
Okay,
Okay.
okay,
okay,
So within that
So wait,
200
was
foot-
that everyone?
yes.
Even you?
I'm getting confused now. Let's
Wh-
go back. You
Yes.
leave the buffer there.
So within that area that we identified, and Travis will have to throw that picture back up there, and within that 200 feet,
Can't
it's
be
not
visible.
it's not a restriction, it's not a prohibition, it's a restriction
Restriction on
the
visibility.
front door, yes,
Right.
restriction on
Right.
visibility.
I'm
You
fine with
might, you,
What, John?
nothing. I'm looking where that zone goes up into the other side,
Hillside.
and I guess it really doesn't affect anything.
But what about, we never solved the Snowmass Center second level backside thing.
I thought we
I
did.
think we had 4 that said,
Yeah, but
Yeah.
before this said
First
just
level.
not
Yep.
the main floor.
Right, just not main
so
floor.
we're talking Bayou, Tasters, Cleaners, Douglas Elliman, Clark's, Post
Well,
Office.
I had Marky, Tom, Alyssa. Bob, did you,
The three of us, Bill's probably a no.
but what did Bob say?
what did you just say? I'm sorry.
On the second floor Snowmass Center, I only had Marky, Tom, and Alyssa. Bill said no, and then I didn't hear from Bob.
As far as no first floor,
Right,
I'm okay with no first floor.
okay.
I mean, you know, you're gonna have people, I'm talking about the existing center, not even talking about the potential of the new PUD. Walking up the stairways, going to, I'm looking at, you know, Dr. Langstaff's
Right.
down that hallway, which is the strange offices that you were referring to.
Right where the bathrooms
It's just weird up there.
It is weird.
Okay, we need to bring this to a close here. It's
Um,
10 after 7.
I think that
I-
may be.
I think there's only one more issue that we need to talk about, which is,
Limiting.
do we want to restrict the number of dispensaries?
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah,
That because we were talking before about the Brush Creek buffer and we changed the restriction to basically be no entrance visibility on Brush Creek Road,
Right.
I think that the same should go for carriageway, that you shouldn't be able to put signage on carriageway. Because I feel like it's a main thoroughfare through the village, and I talked to Clint about it earlier. I mean, there are potential places that it could be, and I feel like if you're putting, not saying they can't be there, I'm just saying there should be a restriction.
I'm fine with that.
what options before agreeing to that,
Yeah.
what options are there for signage if it's,
Do we want to finish this whole discussion tonight, because we'll be here till at least 8 o'clock, just on this alone?
Well, I feel like we're almost done.
I sort of feel like
Okay,
we're pretty
okay.
close.
I think we're real close.
This just relates to my putting a restriction on the number of places. Because it also, feel like if you're doing that to Brush Creek, it's kind of the same thing. It's a
With
main
carriageway,
thoroughfare through the
that makes
village.
sense.
Alyssa, you know, I probably don't have a problem with that on Carriageway as long as there's some place to put the sign. Okay, but if the only place to put for instance, if it were where the barbecue place is, right, where else could, where else might the sign go?
Snowmelt Road,
We're
right?
talking Snowmelt.
Snowmelt Road.
We're talking Snowmelt Road.
You were talking carriageway, weren't you?
That's Snowmelt, isn't it?
Yes.
Carriageway is Snowmelt.
Carriageways, I'm talking about like,
There's no
the-
signs on carriageway.
there's a lot of signs.
I believe Alyssa's just trying
For
to
all the
mitigate.
condominiums, I'm talking about like Timberline,
Oh,
if they
okay,
allowed it
then
in
I'm
the,
sorry, I'm in the wrong place.
where the edges and they put a sign. I mean, I'm just saying, I feel like the same restriction should be on Carriageway. I think if one of them is gonna go in there, it's fine, but I don't think that you should be able to drive up and see the marijuana
So
store
that the
sign.
sign would have to be inside?
Or on Elbert or on Daly.
Yeah, it would just
or on
have
one
to
of the
be
side
facing
streets.
inwards. It's
Okay.
the same thing that we're saying for Brush Creek.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I got two. There's three of us now. We're good. Okay, now number.
So, I'm just throwing something out, all right, because we've heard, and I got a sense of maybe, there's a number of 2 or 3 which seem to be in people's minds. And rather than try to locate them, and I don't know, maybe, I may be off totally, that there's a feeling or a sense of trying to locate them.
No.
1 here or 2 there, or,
Well, I'm thinking that that would be the most probable outcome, would be.
but not necessarily in the regulation.
Right.
But the thing that concerns me the most about limiting numbers is, what is the process going to be to review applications and and decide who gets it and who doesn't get it?
That's another whole,
But that's not on us. That's gonna be on the landlords.
No.
no,
no,
no.
that's on
Licensing
us.
comes through us.
Well, they have to get a lease before they can come to get a license.
Yeah, but so what if,
The risk they're taking.
So if you limit it to 3 and 10 people show up on day 1, how are you gonna decide?
Right.
10 people with leases. I'm gonna urge you to let the market decide.
That's
You
what
put-
everybody
you
tells
put-
us, that that's the wrong
You
thing
put
to
the
do.
buffers, you put the distances in, you put the buffers in, and let the market decide.
Well, right, that's what I'm saying. I mean, essentially, the landlord's gonna decide.
Well, not if you say there's only 2 shops in town. How do you decide when 10 people go out and take leases and they all come in on day 1?
John, well, I don't understand how you would, if I were owner of a property, how would you wind up with 10 leases when you already have a lease with 9 other people for the same property?
They wouldn't all be the same property.
Yeah, but Romero owns,
You talk like that and you're doing social engineering, and then the town becomes liable for your decisions.
I don't really like the idea of let the market drive it, but.
Okay.
Right now, we're talking about potentially West Village, and if there's room for 2 shops up there, and down at the center, possibly 2 shops down there.
Yeah,
So-
but what about on Carriageway, up, all the way up Snowmelt Road?
Well,
I mean, there's no,
when I drive up Snowmelt Road, I'm looking at, there's condos. I don't know, what's commercial
I
there?
don't know. Clint seemed to suggest to me that it's
The
very
Edge Restaurant was the
locked.
example I used when Alyssa
Which
brought
one?
it. The Edge Restaurant.
And the
Oh, yeah,
Stonebridge.
the Edge Restaurant, right.
And the
Or
Stonebridge.
Stonebridge Restaurant.
I would say not in a condo project is what I would say.
I mean, that's to answer your question. That's why I
Well,
think
yeah,
John's point
correct.
is
I'm
there's
trying to
stuff that we're
think,
not trying to think and saying there's restrictions
It's where the
on.
old
but we're just-
Pocoloti, the restaurant used to be a Pocoloti, the Mexican place,
Well, that's
Pinata.
La Pinata, Dan Kloster's old place.
I mean, because
That's
right
not
now we have no
Carriageway.
restrictions on the residential, which I don't necessarily think there needs to be a restriction.
Yes,
I'm
we
just
do.
saying.
We do have.
No, I'm,
From residential.
I meant, like in the Snowmass Center, and I didn't phrase it right.
I tell you what, I think we need to table the amount of shops we need, right? 'Cause like,
It's
we
gonna
could
take
go-
till 8 o'clock.
This is gonna, well, it would be lucky
But you
if we
gotta get through
finish.
the
We'd be
regulations yet.
lucky if we finish it by 8 o'clock. I think we're on the right track, and if we just keep the door open, let everybody think about what they want to do on the amount of shops, then we can come back to that.
Let's do that.
That's my thought.
Well, it's getting late and we've got,
Okay,
We have an
Probably-
executive session.
yes, executive session next. Okay,
but good work, everybody.
So when do you want to reschedule this for?
okay, whenever there's a full council again.
So
What
the-
is that?
Not the 5th, wait
The
till after the
19th.
election.
What?
The 19th probably, is that right?
I think they said they're not doing, they're not
Of
doing that.
November? Out.
You're in December.
Okay. That's what we'll do.
That really helps with Proposition 74. 'cause
I'm sorry, what was the date?
that gets approved.
We really need to have the full council here for this. Okay,
So December 3rd, is that the call?
I think it is.
I don't have it open.
I'm
I just ready
I'm
to know
open
next
right
time there's a
now.
full council. So,
Right now, December 3rd, I don't see anybody being missing.
okay, we'll get it for that.
Bob, did you say, no, you're out, never mind, you're out on the 5th of November.
I'll tell you what's not as bad.
Okay. Town council will now meet in executive session pursuant to CRS 24640224 and Snowmass Village Municipal Code 245C to specifically discuss one item, provided there is an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the quorum present at this meeting, held in executive session and for the sole purpose of considering items A and B above. Provided further, there is no adoption of any proposed policy, position, resolution, regulation, or formal action shall occur at this executive session. Do I have a motion to support?
So
Motion.
moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Bob. Thank you, Bill. All in support?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Bob and Bill. Okay, 5 minutes.